Good afternoon, everyone. I am your host, Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. We have a very special show for you today. Let me make sure that everything is going okay on our end here. Yeah, we've got a treat for you today. It is the Conduit Legislative Roundup. Lots of stuff are happening here. In our House and our Senate. And so we're going to talk about some of the House bills, some of the Senate bills, and what's important, getting information from experts, talking about how you can get involved, and really, just trying to provide an education, right? Many believe that, the presidential election is the most important. And while that is important, in all honesty, is that down ballot stuff, the things that affect your day to day life, which are indeed the most important. So, like I said, we're going to go ahead and get into it here in about 5 minutes. I need to make some programming announcements here before we get going. Yeah, I'm super excited today. Let's see, make sure we're looking good here. All right. How are we doing there? Let's see, we got our volume going well. There we go. All right. Looks like we're doing good. All right. So, nope, not yet. Let me go ahead and give you the first announcement here. This is very important, people, and also very distressing. This is a press release that was given to me, and I'm going to go ahead and read it now. Latino, Latina, and Latinx families to hold a town hall to discuss experiences in North Kitsap schools and to challenge systemic racism and advance racial equity in schools countrywide. Latino families build on a November 2022 meeting to create safe space to share, partner, and make plans to address racial inequities in education in Kitsap County. Posebo, Washington, Latino families announced today an intention to follow up on a November 2022 meeting with North Kitsap School District to address racism, discrimination, and lack of resources. On February 7th of 2023, which is tomorrow at 6:30 p.m., Latino community will gather with other Kitsap communities of color and supporters to address systemic barriers and opportunity and combat injustices faced by communities of color in Kitsap school system. The town hall will center on experiences of Latinx students and families and set the stage for a community wide commitment to change. Okay. The Kitsap Sun documented the November 2022 meeting in an article. Latino parents, students say they face racism, discrimination in North Kitsap High. I'll go ahead and pin that in the description if you want to read that. Upwards of 40 people attended the meeting, which lasted nearly 3 hours. Latino parents shared stories of racial bullying by teachers, discrimination by teachers, lack of access to translation materials, bullying on public school buses, and more. In one example, Latino students from Kingston High School were told by teachers, go back across the border. In North Kitsap High School, a parent reported that her son's teacher told him his difficulty studying was because he ate too many burritos. A father reported that his daughter has been called a beaner and told to go back to Mexico. And multiple parents shared that at elementary schools, there are inadequate language acquisition resources, often leaving peers to tutor fellow students. Latino families report not being given critical communication from the district and school in an accessible format or in Spanish. At the meeting, they requested to receive these critical communications. Families were asked to contact the L coordinator or the EL coordinator directly, but when they left messages, their calls were not returned. The Latino families at November meeting expressed a desire to support the education of not only their students in North Kitsap School District, but also many of the underrepresented groups and ethnicities in Kitsap County. The families also expressed a desire for actionable change. So again, this is going to take place tomorrow. Again, as I shared before, Friday, February 7th at 6:30 p.m. So I wanted to make that announcement there. for everyone to have that. All right. Now let me jump into my chat here. Facebook some of that looks like I'll be doing okay. Let's see. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. So as it is a let me just share the format of how this is going to go with everyone. So folks are like literally doing work as we speak. So the intent is for them to drop in and out as they are available to do. And let me see. Let me go ahead and pull this. I think it's the press release. Okay. All right. So we'll wait a few minutes for her to come on, and then I'll go ahead and share this information. Yes, it did. There's a crisis going on right now in Tacoma. Okay, so this is being reported to me live, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this up momentarily. Just give me a second here. Wow, that is something. Copy, paste that, and then yeah. So this year, I'll tell you, at the end of really toward the middle of 2022 is when the Conduit G2 and myself personally started getting more involved with politics. Just to give you a little bit of background, and we started covering things like what's going on in our local government, especially around the unhoused on ML King, which is really important. REACT, which is the racial equity um, action committee. I'm pretty sure I just butchered that acronym, but I got a lot of things swirling in my head now. So forgive me, React, for butchering the acronym there. And being an advocate, and not only that, but also trying to empower others through education and knowledge. Uh, Started doing a Sunday show covering what was going on during the budget time, which was really, really important. Uh, that was seriously just popping this up here. Seriously important to understand. $200 million are flowing into into this city, and where does the money go? Right? Who gets the money? Um, what are they spending money on? What do they prioritize? What is the justifications for how money is spent? All those things are critically important. All right, awesome, hey, man. Then we also had an event at New Horizon Ministries where we wanted to advocate for restrooms for everyone. And, we had a lot of different players come and show up, city council folks, Salvation Army, also the very, very, very many stakeholders came up on the scene to advocate. And we got $10,000 earmarked in the budget for, I see it, earmarked for the budget for the unhoused in regards to restrooms down on MO King. As such, as the new year has changed, I applied to be on the audit committee for the city of Bremerton, and I was unanimously elected to that. So I'm very excited about that. And what I told them is the reason that I was doing it is one, I don't know anything really about government and how things work. And I know a lot of my community members, right? If you have a jury of your peers, my peers don't either. And as such, the only way that we're going to know that is if people get in and they share that information out. So I told them that I wanted to be a part of the audit committee And the purpose of me wanting to be on the audit committee was one, for me to learn for my own edification, but also to share that information out to the masses so they can get an understanding on how the city of Bremerton operates from a fiscal standpoint. And so that they voted me in. I had my first meeting at the end of last month, which was just 2 days ago. And so we're gonna go on that journey together. And so here we are, and now we're advocating for House bills and Senate bills. You saw me testify a couple weeks ago. We're going to be taking students to Olympia here on the 20th of February to advocate. And so on and on we go. You know, we're going to work on trying to get out the vote and do some other things. But let me get into this right now. And our first guest may not appear, and shout out to Maru Mora, because right now this is happening in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. Now, understand when we see tear gas, this is Tacoma. This is not the East Coast. This isn't on the border of Texas. This is Tacoma. Hunger strike at the Northwest DC expands to more than 115 people. Immigration authorities brutally spray strikers with tear gas and mock them. The detention center. So this is the Northwest Detention Center. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and read this because we need to know what's happening, right? This is literally 40 minutes away. Yesterday, February 1st, detainees inside 2 units within Northwest Detention Center F3 and F4 began a hunger strike to protest inhuman conditions inside the infamous detention prison. Today, more than 30 detainees within another unit joined the protest, growing the total number to more than 115. Strikes so far. GEO Group responded by retaliating against detainees in Unit F4, where earlier that day, one of the hunger strikers attempted suicide to call attention to their plight. Okay. One detainee speaking anonymously to La Resistencia said the situation worsened. They threw pepper spray and gas bombs through the ducts. We were choking from the smell. The official who gave us orders simply said that we had to lock us down. We begged them to take us into the yard, but they only laughed at us. Finally, one official who could no longer breathe ordered the unit evacuated, though they did so one at a time rather than allowing them all out. Wow. GEO is a private for-profit corporation, just for your information, but they only laughed at us. Finally, one official who could no longer breathe ordered the unit evacuated. They did so one at a time. Think about that. You're choking, you can't breathe, rather than allowing them all out. A person in a separate unit spent 20 minutes unconscious before GEO Group called a medic unit. This was due to the gases coming in through the vents into the rest of the units. The rest of the F4 removals are currently in lockdown at a different unit or in solitary confinement. Now, this isn't a prison. This is supposed to be a detention center, right? Then they have solitary confinement. Okay. Detainees in other units reported that the GEO Group used so much gas that it spread elsewhere in the immigration prison. Some of them chose to spend the evening in the cold in the yard. It was 32 degrees last night here in Kitsap County. That's freezing temperatures. Some wore multiple face masks. Some more wet their masks to avoid inhaling toxic gases. And 2 people from the G4 unit are currently in the hospital. And understand, these are families. These aren't individuals, families. As of this morning, right? This morning today, people in that unit report ICE officers already appeared to be ready to negotiate with them to end their hunger strike. They are demanding the following: real food. People get sick from eating what you give us. They deny us fruit and provide fake soy meat. Okay. We don't know if we don't care. Number 2, regular meals times, they change constantly. You don't even know when you're going to eat. Low commissary prices. Current ones are prohibitive. Administration used to provide a commissary bag, but no more. ICE took away our only decent source of food. So it sounds like there was a way for people to buy food that was human for consumption, but they took that option away. Real cleaning. We are not in post COVID. Real COVID-19 preventative measures, right? Which those two definitely go hand in hand, right? Especially when you're talking about a large amount of people. Jobs that pay at least minimum wage. They took our jobs but won't properly maintain the prison or even pay us to do them. CEOs withhold recreation unless we clean. Wow. Haircuts more than once a month. Decent clothes. Current ones are full of holes, dirty, and not even dry. I'm putting all this stuff in the chat. Decent bedding. We are handed child-sized blankets, and our sheets are not changed. I can imagine probably, the hospital blankets that are super thin, not going to keep you warm in big drafty areas. Better medical services, including dentist visits with real care. Current dentists won't do anything but pull teeth. We're not going to try to save your teeth. We're just going to pull those things. I thought this was going to be 5 or 6 things. And, well, sorry. Real tension from ICE. Officials barely stop by and they don't know anything about our cases. No retaliation against us. So there's a real risk in talking about this, advocating, pleading for help, to be treated humanely. Join La Resistencia for emergency rallies at Northwest Detention Center today, February 2nd, tomorrow, February 3rd, and Saturday, February 4th. See below for more information. Okay. And that is why Maru. Oh, she is here. Hey, that's awesome. All right. I'd see her down there. So I was going to say, that's why she's not here, but she is here. So let me go ahead and bring her on because her time is so tremendously valuable. Mora, how are you doing today?
Really busy. Sorry, we're getting calls from the detention center, and we're working really hard to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and everybody lends a hand so this nightmare ends as soon as possible. So apologies for being late.
No, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. I just read the press release that came out. Can you just go into that and give some more detail as to what's happening? This is happening in Tacoma. This is the first I'm learning about it. I'm 40 minutes away. Please just go into it.
Yes. So the detention center that opened back in 2005, I believe it was built in 2004. So it's almost 20 years of this horrible place that has hundreds of people detained. The maximum capacity is actually 2,000 people. The conditions are getting worse and worse every day. It is a private business, and as such, their bottom line is money, right? How much money can they make out of people detained? And so what we've seen is that the business is creating any ways they can to exploit people in detention further and their families and everybody around. All the community ends up paying for this business. And so one of the things that we've been doing to shut down the place is being through passing policy, public policy, lawsuits, pressure, you name it. But one of the things that led to this hunger strike is that GEO refuses to pay the minimum wage to people that work in detention. And such, they chose to stop something that they call a volunteer work program. And the volunteer work program used to have people in detention working within the detention center for $1 a day. So they really were the backbone of this place. They cleaned, they cooked, they washed, they painted, they wax the floors. They did everything. And then there was a lawsuit saying, you know what? Anybody that works in our state, no matter whether they have papers or not, they work, they have to be paid the minimum wage. So in October 2021, GEO lost this lawsuit and they appeal. So the appeal is happening. But in the meantime, as soon as they lost the lawsuit, they decided to end the volunteer work program, to refuse to pay the minimum wage to people that decrease the living conditions in the detention center, because all of a sudden, who's going to clean? Who's going to paint? Who's going to wash? Who's going to cook? And the guards that work there, they don't want to do this. But now, through all these months, they end up having to do it themselves. That really impacted the conditions there. So food is not only bad, it's not only trash, it's late. So people complain a lot about having lunch at between 11 and 12 and then dinner at 8 or 9 p.m. So imagine going about 8 to 9 hours without eating. And then the kind of meals you get are trash. So we actually do something that is called mutual aid. We send money to people that in detention. So any donations we get, we send them to them. And we just couldn't keep up this month of January because people call and call and call saying we cannot eat this food, or if we eat it, it's not enough. We're hungry, and the commissary items are really expensive. The cleaning of the units is horrible. It's so dirty. So all of this combined into this moment where one unit with about 80 people, we heard this morning, decided to go on hunger strike yesterday. The unit next door also joined. So the first unit is called the F4. The unit next door is called F3. And the F3 called us and said, well, we're joining the hunger strike with F4, but something is going on. And short story here is that they were witness to the GEO guards switching into SWAT gear, again, like anti-riot gear, and went in with long weapons and canisters. All of a sudden, they see all these windows tinted yellow. They also noticed that the guards were playing with the cameras and trying to move the cameras or cover cameras that were facing that unit. And the smell of pepper spray. They saw people coming out. They also saw the guards taking everything away from the unit. That means the microwave, the property, a lot of stuff from the unit. And all of a sudden, they see people coming out just one by one after being pepper sprayed. So that means that about, maybe 80 people were literally hanging in this unit with pepper spray and not being pulled out immediately, but just one by one. Some of them were sent to a separate unit, F1, and some others were sent to the segregation units. And I just got a call. That's why I was like, one person did call from segregation telling me, this is what happened to us. We were on hunger strike. People refused to go to their bunk beds. They were sitting at their tables and they were demanding for ICE to meet our demands. And because we refused to do that, they just start pulling out, the guards start pulling out everything from the units. And all of a sudden they come back in riot gear and they start drawing weapons against us. He said it was very scary. When he said that, I cannot even imagine how they felt. I asked him for details and he couldn't remember a lot. He said they have long weapons. I don't know what kind of weapons those are. They throw gas at us. I couldn't even tell what it was. But right now, they're refusing us to have medical care. That he told me his throat hurts, his skin hurts, his eyes are irritated. He says, I don't know what kind of gas was that, but all his muscles are sore, and they're completely denied medical care. And just by chance that he was able to call me, the call dropped and he didn't call me back again. So that's the situation right now in Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma.
So this is families, right? Men, women, and children?
Only adults, men. All these people here in these units are males, but there's also women detained. less, it's a smaller number in comparison. But as a matter of fact, the women's section is separate, very separate, on the opposite side of the facility. And they called us last night saying that they also felt the pepper spray. So the spray
Mm.
went, it was so much that it went through the vents, that it went through all the other units. Another unit called us saying that somebody fainted because of the gases. And this person didn't get medical attention until 20 minutes later. We heard that also two other people end up in the hospital because of the exposure to gases. We haven't been able to confirm that. We don't know who they are. And we learned that early in the day, when the situation was getting worse and worse, a person attempted suicide to bring attention to the hunger strike, and to bring attention from ICE and GEO to meet their demands.
So, Mauro, do you know, are there uh, protocols in place? Is this even legal to pepper spray inside buildings when there's no ventilation?
As far as we know, there's not really a protocol for this. This had never happened here in Tacoma, yet it happened some years ago in another geo facility in California, Adelanto, where there were the videos, the videos that the people in detention later were able to get, where it shows how they're sitting at their table, similar situation what they just described here. They were sitting at the table, they refused to get up, and the guards came in with the spray and pulled them out from their tables and from their units. But that was filmed, and in this case, they purposely had the cameras away so there would be no video of this situation. So we don't believe it's legal. I assume that ICE is going to say that it's legal. Probably ICE and G are going to blame the people. They're going to say, oh, they were trying to do a riot or whatever. It's not new how ICE and GEO retaliates against hunger strikers. What is new to us here is that they have used that level of violence against people in detention. We have seen retaliation of all sorts, sending them to segregation, even deporting them, transferring them to other facilities, right? But we have never seen pepper spray here being used before until now.
For those of you that are joining us, our guest today is Mora from La Resistencia. Am I saying that correctly? And she's talking about what is happening in real time in Tacoma, and this is a human rights issue that is critical, and something needs to be done. Is there a way that local government can do an injunction and step in here and fix the situation?
Yeah, we've been trying many different ways. As a matter of fact, we have been working with City of Tacoma for some years to empty the place. Years ago they agreed to have a detention center built in their city. Now they disagree with the fact that people are detained in their city. So we applaud that, but it's not enough. So we've been working with the state to pass a policy that allows the state agencies, and in this case local agencies such as the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, to go in and inspect the facility unannounced. Because right now, if a state agency or the local health department wants to go in, they refuse the entrance. Geo says,
Mm,
no, you can't come in. I have a contract with the feds. And the health department is like, oh, okay. And they leave.
wow.
So what we're saying is no, we need a policy that standardizes all our state agencies, including local health departments, to go into civil detention private facilities such as this one to inspect and inspect unannounced, because there's been inspections of this place, but they're all set up, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
people tell us ahead of time, oh, somebody's coming, there's some inspection, because all of a sudden we're getting better food, they're cleaning, everything looks fine, is shiny. Yes, because an inspection is coming. So that obviously is part of how the system sustains itself. So we actually are just introduced a bill in the legislature, is the bill HB 1470. And that is precisely what we want to do. We want to standardize the conditions that are already in place for certain facilities to all facilities in Washington state that are civil detention private, and that allows our state agencies, the Department of Ecology, the Department of Health, Department of Labor, all of them, to go in and make sure that we have access to this place. And if this place is not meeting the standards, the basic public health safety standards, they should be shutting down the kitchen, they should be shutting down the laundry, those kind of things. And that is what we're trying to do right now. As a state, that is something that the state can do, and we know the city of Tacoma wants also to have a better system, so the local health department can also go in with the authority to inspect at any moment.
So I'm looking at the House bill here, and it says February 7th is the House Committee Safety, Justice, and Reentry meeting, which is at 4. Are people able to make public comment at that time?
Yes, they can actually go right now to the website and sign pro, please. And they can send also a statement ahead of time, a written statement in pro of the bill. Some of us will be there to testify in person. But it will be really important if you all show your support, sign pro for this legislation, that we hope that it becomes a law as soon as possible so we can utilize it, because it sounds good in paper, but until we actually put it in action, these kind of things that these guys were complaining about, if we had had a system in place, we probably could have avoided this situation, right? Because people would have a conduit, a real conduit to grievance these problems and solve these problems. At the end of the day, we don't want better conditions there. We want the place shut down. That's what Resistencia wants. But in the meantime, while we accomplish that, we need to have our state authorities going in and making sure that this kind of treatment doesn't get to this point of what just happened yesterday and today.
Absolutely. We have a question in the chat. Didn't the state outlaw for-profit prisons?
They did in 2021, HB 1090. And what happened is that the law that we worked on, HB 1090, was modeled after another law from California, which is AB 32. And back then in 2019, the Trump administration filed a lawsuit against California because of that law. When Biden came into office, he continued that lawsuit. And this lawsuit was lost by California in the Ninth Circuit. California decided not to appeal because the kind of Supreme Court we have, very likely they would lose and they would set a precedent for the rest of us. And so now what Gio is saying is, look, California said this is not right. So, yeah, I mean, the Fed said California, what it's doing is not right. So therefore, HB 1090 shouldn't be no more. Right now, HB 1090 is still law, but it might have an impact later on possibly in the next year, where the feds are going to come and say, no, your law is not good anymore. What they're arguing is that they're saying that we cannot tell the feds who to contract with.
Gotcha.
But what they're saying is that this is a private business. So if it's a private business, our state agencies should be able to go in and inspect like any other business, right? Like if you go to a restaurant and you get sick, you can complain, and the local health department should go in and make sure that that doesn't happen again. That's where we're coming from this time. So even if we end up losing HB 1090, we should be able to HB 1470 to go in and take on those inspections.
And so you it sounds like you have a lot of experience with House bills. So can you kind of tell folks, if you're successful with this House bill, what is the time frame from the time that you go and testify on the 7th? When could there be some change?
Well, by the end of April, early May, we should have the governor signing the law. And as soon as it's signed, it becomes effective. And so that means that as soon as grievances happen, the state agencies should be able to go in, inspect. And if there's failures to the inspection, they should be able to file for fines and fees. And if none of those things work, we can always go to the Attorney General and make sure that these civil detention facilities meet the standards, but also meet the consequences of not meeting the standards. So it would be as soon as the governor signs us into law.
Okay. So tell us, what can we do? How can we help now immediately, right? I mean, that's May, and there's still a process there, but there's a crisis going on as we speak. So what can we do to help? And what outcome are we looking for?
Well, we're looking for everybody that was in the 4 unit to be given medical care and be released from segregation. To make sure that the SWAT team doesn't go in anymore into any of the units that are right now hunger strike. And in our social media, we have phone numbers for the facility and some emails from for the authorities of ICE within the facility. So we want people to email, call, please express your opinion, express your outrage, right? That this what they did is not only wrong, it's not forgiven. We're not gonna forgive this. It cannot be forgiven what they did to these guys. ICE always says that people in detention have the right to protest. But every time they do it, there's always retaliation. But the level of retaliation now is really, really scary. So in our social media, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we even have TikTok now. And it would be great if people can follow those calls to actions, do the calls, send the emails. But tonight and tomorrow we'll show up outside the detention center at 7 p.m. So it
Okay.
would be great to have some people showing up with us. We'll also come back on Saturday at noon. But it would be great to have some people come in because when we're outside the detention center, we do video calls if possible with people in detention. And when they not only see us doing a video call, but literally being outside the detention center, it totally changes, right? It lifts their spirits. They know that when we're saying we're with you, it's true. We're literally outside with them, fighting this fight with them. So it would be great for everybody to make sure that show up to the rally. And if you can show up to the rally but you want to do more than just calling and emailing, we're asking people to take a selfie right now. Just
Okay.
write a sign that says I support the hunger strikers, meet their demands, free them all. Take that selfie and post it and tag the president of the United States, Secretary Mayorkas of Department of Homeland Security, and tell them to shut down the detention center.
All right. That's easy enough to do, folks. And if people want to donate money or resources, is there a way to get those items, like things for a commissary, into the detention center?
Sadly, no. In the past, we could send some items. Now we have to pay through Amazon to
Mm,
send anything, and we have a whole campaign against Amazon anyway. So we don't do that. What we do is we send money orders to people in detention because there's an online system to send money directly and quickly, but that system charges $7 for every transaction. So if we want to
for
send
every
20,
transaction.
mm-hmm,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So we get donations of $20. We sell T-shirts and all that, and so the donations go to them. So every T-shirt is $20. So if we use that system, we would only send them $13 because this company is another company that makes money of people in detention. So what we do is we receive the donations through Venmo, PayPal, or cash, or checks. In our website is all the information. There's also Act Blue, that is a new platform that we're using. And so as people donate to us, we literally go and buy money orders at the store and we fill them out by hand and we send a letter, right? We literally send letters to people in detention, and each of them get this envelope with their money order and a letter from us. And it takes longer, but we at least make sure that they get the full $20. And they also get to hear from us through the letters. We even have a pen pal program as well. So yeah, we try to make sure that people understand we don't want people in detention with $20. That's not our goal, because the $20 is not for them. But the situation is so dire inside that we cannot just turn around and say, okay, we'll get them out someday, and in the meantime, whatever. We need to make sure that they eat, that they
Yeah.
have a hat, a socks, toiletries. They just email us today saying that they needed toiletries. Even to send us an email, it costs 50 cents per 500 characters. So if we want to be
Or
in
an
touch,
email?
mm-hmm.
Wow.
So we send an email that it costs us 50 cents for 500 characters, but for them to reply to our email, they have to pay 50 cents too to reply to our email. So when we send them the $20, it's for some commissary items, but it's also communications, not only with us, but with their families. The phone calls cost, the video call cost, the emails cost. So it's a lot of work that needs to be done, and that's why we fundraise. Literally every dollar that we get through these donations, everything goes to people in detention.
All right. Again, I want to thank you for coming on, Maru Mora. I have it on the screen for everyone to see today from 2 to 7, tomorrow from 3 to 7, and Saturday 4 to 12 at the Northwest Detention Center, which is at 1623 East J Street. Please join La Resistencia and their campaign for humanity. I mean, just plain and simple.
Yes.
This is going on right now. There's a lot of things that you can do, as Maru was sharing with us. I didn't even think about being a pen pal. Uh, Folks sometimes don't think they can't. I don't know what I can do, but there's so many different ways that you can get activated, and every little bit helps. So I encourage you to get involved. This isn't on the border of Texas. This isn't in California. We're in Kitsap County. This is 40 minutes away, right? This is right next to you. This is your neighborhood. So I encourage you to really get involved here. I'm just looking at my chat here.
Just want to make sure that
Uh,
so the it was the dates and the time. So February 2nd, 7 p.m., February 3rd, 7 p.m., February 4th at noon. So not 3 to 7. It's just so tonight we'll be there at 7 p.m. Tomorrow we'll be there at 7 p.m. again. And then on
okay.
Saturday we'll be there at noon.
All right. And there is the address there. Just wanted to pop that up. We'll put that in the chat. We're going to be on here for a few hours today, so we'll continue to check in. Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with, Maru
Uh,
Mora?
I just want to thank you for the chance. I really appreciate the opportunity. Especially we need people from Tacoma, right? This is your neighborhood. When we heard about that the all the efforts in Tacoma to have a livable city, a healthy city, that also implies not having a detention center where hundreds of people are there in the middle of the port, not only facing all these horrible conditions, but also the horrible conditions right outside where they're at, which is the port, all the pollution, right, all the contamination. And as we feel that the pollution should be fixed and the land in that area should be given back to the Puyallup tribe, it means also shutting down the detention center. So we hope that people from Tacoma support that effort and they see the shutdown of the detention center as part of having a Tacoma that is livable and there is equal and gives equality to everyone in the city.
All right. I wanted to just bring Anika on before you jumped off, Maru Mora. In case you hadn't met, this is Anika Large from Kayak, which is an awesome organization right here in Kitsap County. How are you doing, Anika? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. I've been listening. It's been really cool to get this information.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to again thank you so much, Maru Mora, for coming on. You have an open invitation to come on anytime. Please give us updates, and we will try to do everything that we can to elevate this and get folks to come out and support.
Thank
Can
you,
I
everyone.
Maru, can I ask you a quick question before, if you have time? I know that there was the bill, and I think it's 1090 that you mentioned that was going to end private prisons, and I missed where you talked about why that isn't going to shut down Northwest Detention Center.
Because we model this law on a California law from 2019 that the Trump and the Biden administration decided to challenge, and in the Ninth Circuit, the California law was lost. So California decided not to appeal to the Supreme Court, and so that on those the AB 32, which is the law from California. And although our law is still valid, maybe within a year the feds are going to say, AB 32 is no more, yours is not either. So that's why we're prepping with this kind of policy right now. to ensure that, well, if the feds don't agree with us, that we should be deciding which kind of businesses we want in our state, at least we should be able to go into these businesses and regulate them through inspections.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I just went on your Instagram and will be following you guys. I'm with an organization in Bremerton, Kitsap Immigrant Assistance Center, and we work with folks in the detention center sometimes. So it's, yeah, good. We appreciate the work you all do and the updates that you give out too. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you again. And gotta run. Hope to have everyone taking your selfies. At least take your selfies and post them. That would be really important for us. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. All right. Again, for those that are just joining us, this is our Conduit Legislative Roundup today. We just heard from Mora from La Resistencia, and now we have Anika Turner from Kayak with us now. Thank you so much, Anika, for coming on. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's cool to get to be part of this.
Absolutely. So, we kind of had to switch up the format because, well, there's a crisis going on in Tacoma. So we were just going to come on and talk about the House bills and have a relaxing conversation. But, there's this urgency. So we had to kind of switch up what we were doing. Can we first just kind of get your thoughts in regards to what's happening in Tacoma, and then maybe switch into the House bills and kind of talk about what Kayak is doing in that regard, and then what Kayak is just doing in general in Kitsap County?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know the extent that Maru was talking about of what's going on. And so it's pretty intense to hear about that. I know that that's not the first. I feel like detainees have taken action before, and La Resistencia has been doing work for a very long time. Like, it's not a new thing that conditions are not good. But it sounds like it's reached a new level, and it was helpful to have her background on that being because of the minimum wage law, which, yeah, it's just gross. I think when the institution is for profit and what that means for the people that are there. I think it's also like someone in immigration detention, they're not being held there because of a crime. This is my non-attorney opinion. An immigration offense isn't a crime. That's why you also don't get a public defender. So we're holding someone for an alleged immigration violation, which isn't even at the level of committing a crime in the US. So I think it's extra gross that we as a country are treating people like that.
Well, what's shocking to me is, I see what they put in mainstream media, and it's always, down at the borders. I was saying before, it's Texas, it's away from here, and this is, again, 40 minutes away, and these conditions are horrific to hear about it. And you may have some understanding, but having it described in regards to what's happening is truly appalling. And it just feels, you feel powerless. Like, so how do we stop this immediately?
Yeah. Our involvement with the detention center, we do most of our work in Kitsap and around Kitsap, but we have one of our accredited representatives that takes on cases in the detention center sometimes, and especially to get people bonded out. So even if we're not able to take their case long term, if we can at least get them bonded out, and that legal hurdle, then they can usually be reunited with family somewhere in the US, wherever they have contacts, and they have a way better chance of finding legal aid and legal representation if they're out of the detention center. So, I mean, I wish we had more capacity to do more. There's an organization called the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project that does a lot of work in the detention center. But the government doesn't fund representation for someone detained, unlike someone who commits a crime and has the right to a public defender. That's not the case with immigration. So you have no right or funding that's helping someone who's detained get legal representation. It's all nonprofits doing that work, essentially.
Wow. So I didn't know that folks could be bonded out. Can you talk about that process, the cost that's associated with that, if folks wanted to donate into that?
We're getting out. I can talk a little bit about it. We're getting out of my wheelhouse.
Okay.
So the bond ranges. I I don't know all the factors involved. Depends partly on the judge, depends, I'm assuming, on the person's circumstances. But it could be, I think, sometimes as low as a few $1,000s, but it can be tens of thousands of dollars. And there is it's called the Fair Fight Bond Fund in Washington. So that's a great place to donate your money. It's run through the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. And that is money where if a detainee is approved for a bond, then they can apply to that fund to get money to pay the bond. And then once they complete their case, and then the money goes back into that fund. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I donate to that fund. I very much support that.
I mean, these are all things that I've never heard before. I wanted to pull up your website.
Fair Fight Bond Fund is what that's called.
Let me show the Kitsap Immigration Assistance Center website here. And of course, you can donate to Kayak also. Act tonight. State your position on Senate Bill 5109. Can we talk about that?
That was from a few days ago. Yeah, I will talk about that. That specific call to action is from last week.
Well, I mean, can you talk about the Senate bill?
Yes. So this year, because it's very difficult for federal immigration reform to get passed, it's more possible at a state level. And a group called the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, or WISN, has been working for the last 6 years or so, 7 years, to push policies at a state level that would make lives better for everyone, and especially for immigrants. And one of those was the 1090 bill about closing private prisons. A couple years ago, they've also had another one, Keep Washington Working, that outlaws local law enforcement's cooperation with ICE. So you can't, hold somebody in jail beyond their sentence just so that ICE can come pick them up. You can't just randomly arrest people outside of courthouses. A lot of things that used to happen and still sometimes happen, but aren't legal at least anymore. So WISN's two priorities this year. WISN is a statewide coalition. Hundreds of organizations and people are part of it. Kayak's part of it. So what I say they, but it's also we. But Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network's two priorities this year. One is Senate Bill, I think it's 5109, which would create a program for undocumented workers in Washington to access unemployment benefits. So there's a lot of folks working with either a false Social Security number or maybe someone else's Social Security number because they have no way to work legally, but they want to work. They need to support themselves. And so the only option available to them would be working for cash or working with a non-valid Social Security number. So you might be working at like a restaurant or a cleaning business or anywhere with your non-valid Social Security number. Pandemic hits, all your coworkers get unemployment benefits when your business closes. You've had the money taken out of each paycheck that we all have taken out of our paycheck for unemployment, but you cannot actually access that. You cannot apply and get those funds, even though someone with a valid social working, you have the right of applying for unemployment if you lose your job and meet the criteria. Someone without a valid social who's working, paying into the same system, has no way to apply for those funds. So this would create a separate fund that would allow for unemployment benefits for undocumented workers. And part of the reason for it being a separate is to protect people's information from government, members of the government that might try to use that information to do people harm. So that would be a big deal. Not only if we have or when we have some other kind of pandemic situation, but just in general, like a lot of people do seasonal work. A lot of businesses rely on undocumented workers to do their work, and they rely on undocumented workers often seasonally. But and for a lot of jobs, if you have permission to work in the U.S., if your job is seasonal, you qualify for unemployment during those shoulder seasons. But once again, if you're undocumented, no, you're just out of luck. It's not your fault that you don't have work anymore, but you don't have income anymore. So this would be a pretty big deal. So that's one proposal. The other one is it's it's a bill that's being sponsored in the House by Representative Ty, but I don't know if it's been introduced yet, and I haven't heard what the bill number is yet. But it's going to be titled something like Health Equity for Immigrants. And we are especially excited about this one because it would create the option for immigrants, regardless of immigration status, to have health insurance. So right now, if you don't have legal status, whether you're here with a pending case, you've jumped through all the legal hoops, you just haven't been approved yet, or whether you're here living under the radar, you came because you needed to, but there's no legal path for you to gain status, that you currently have no way to have health insurance. If you don't have a social security number that's valid, you can't even buy health insurance. So let alone, and also, as we know, health insurance is very expensive, and most of us couldn't afford it if someone wasn't paying part of that. So the second bill, the Health Equity for Immigrants bill, would make it a law for that immigrants, regardless of status, could get health insurance. This is already the case for kids in Washington. So one awesome thing about our state is we give kids health insurance regardless of their status, which I think is pretty humane of us, that an 8-year-old actually gets to go to the dentist. Yeah, revolutionary. Even if their parents don't have enough money, we're still gonna, take care of them if they break their arm. So this would basically be similar, but extend that to adults as well. And it wouldn't matter your immigration status, it would matter your income, just like everyone else. And at Kayak, we have a free medical clinic 3 times a month, and we do a lot of medical care directly and also coordinating medical care for adults that don't have insurance because of their immigration status. And I mean, there's probably not a single day where we're not interacting with people because they're coming to us for assistance because of their lack of health insurance because of immigration status. A lot of that is because someone went to the hospital because they had no other option and they didn't want to go to the doctor, so they waited till it got really bad and had no choice but to go to the ER. And then you get giant bills and you don't know how to navigate the process of filling out financial assistance forms and faxing things. And so a lot of our work is,
Let me ask if I can, like, how do you appeal to folks for these state bills or for these House bills to get them to sponsor it? I see Saldana, Valdez, Dingra, Frames, and several others. How do you appeal to get them to push that through? Are you writing what you want to see? Are they working with you to craft the bill? Like, how does that work?
So that all happens with staff members from Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. I'm not part of any of that directly, but I know that it has to do with they build relationships with different legislators over time and have a lot of meetings and relationship building with them. So these aren't ideas that were hatched this year. I think both of them maybe were already presented last year. I don't remember. But for example, with the unemployment one, I think you make different cases, one being the economic case that these workers are already paying into this system. So why would we not allow them to have benefits from it? But I don't know much about that. I think it's a lot of individual conversations and finding people who have priorities that are aligned.
And so it sounds like the Solidarity Network will talk with Congress, but for boots on the ground, they'll come to Kayak for testimonials and stories.
Right.
So it's more kind of indirect in that way. Like, what's really happening? We need that so we can tell those stories and advocate.
Yeah. And Wyson, every staff member I've ever met that's with Wyson started really small and they've grown a lot, but every staff member that I've met is an immigrant or a child of immigrants. Most have been undocumented at some point in their lives or even currently are. Immediate family members are. Like, it is being led by people who are directly impacted. So they are both the boots on the ground and the ones meeting with legislators. They are like, hey, I'm doing this for my mom, who does not have insurance because she's undocumented. Like, it's not, they're not disconnected from the people that would be impacted. They are the people that would be impacted. So it's Wyson is really, mostly immigrants that are members of and leading that. And like their website said, it's building immigrant and refugee power in Washington State, and they've become like really powerful, and they've become a model for other states too. So I'm very thankful. I personally get a lot of joy from being part of that group and getting to be involved with them, because they're like, I don't know, very brave because they're surviving and they're looking the shit of the world in the face and not looking away. And so it's great people. So we had a few folks from Wyson come out to kayak a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah, because we participated in their advocacy days and meetings and stuff before, but it hasn't been a broad participation from the community here because I think there's just not awareness. We had 3 meetings throughout a day, and they brought a couple of translators so that they could have headsets and do simultaneous interpretation so that we could have Spanish and English speakers in the room together. And we put the word out, and this is just like informational meeting, like not giving away anything. There's no food, like it's literally just come and learn. And we have a conference room that fits about 30 people. We packed probably 40 people in, and we had like 20 people spilling out each door. And over the course of the day, we had about 150 people coming to those meetings, and probably 130 of them were undocumented immigrants that are going to be directly impacted by legislation. And we have about 100 people that have signed up to go to Olympia in a couple weeks to show that during an advocacy day that Wyson's organizing. So much so that Wyson had a capacity for that event of like 200 or 250 people. And after they came to Washington, they had like over 100 more people sign up. And so they're like, we have a wait list because we don't have room for everyone. So it's pretty awesome. I've found, a lot of folks in our area that are really excited to go to Olympia to like be unafraid and talk about why this is important to them, and either or be out in front of the Capitol. But I'm super excited.
That is fantastic. If you don't mind, let me play a little bit of that and show what it's like for Wyson to testify here for State Bill or Senate Bill 5109 here.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Gloria Medina. Vivo en Yakima junto con mis hijas.
Are you able to hear that?
Emigré en Yakima del 1992 y tengo 29 años trabajando y contribuyendo con mis taxes en este estado. Hace 3 meses perdí mi empleo, antes del Día de Acción de Gracias. Soy madre soltera y soy la que mantiene mi hogar junto con mis hijas. Perdí de mi sueldo, cual me puso en total pánico porque como muchos de nosotros, con lo poco que ganamos, estamos de cheque a cheque. Apenas cubrimos nuestros gastos para nosotros. Estos 3 meses ha sido una batalla constante sin poder pagar mi renta, biles, internet, comida, celular, gas, aseguranzas y ciencia personal, y para el hogar decidiendo que es más importante. En el momento porque no alcanza para más, aplicado para varios empleos en los cuales han sido discriminados.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Tenemos la interpretación ahora.
So, what I wanted to ask you. Whoops, let me go ahead and pause that there. it didn't look like she was inside the rotunda, I guess that is. So are they able to testify
Yes. So
remotely? Okay,
yeah, hearings are happening. I think you have the option to go in person. I don't know, but it's mostly happening remotely.
gotcha. And so it sounds like it's probably pretty at capacity already for a few weeks. But if people wanted to get involved, they should go directly to Wyson. Can they come to Kayak and you direct them there if they're local?
So I think either, but one good option is going to wyson.org and signing up. If you click on Take Action, you can sign up for updates. And then when there is a hearing for either one of these bills, they will send an email, which is the one that we posted on our website. That's take action tonight, go to this link. Some people might be familiar with signing in pro. You're saying like, this is my name, this is where I live, so that that message goes to your legislator, and you click pro, like you want this thing to pass. You can put in a message about why if you want or not, but it does really help. Like when they do those hearings, a lot of times they'll say, you know, how many people signed in pro or how many people signed in against. So signing in pro takes very little time. And I trust Wyson, so I know if they're recommending something, my values are in alignment with theirs, and I will sign in pro even if I haven't read the whole bill because I trust them. I'll still do my research, but I would encourage people to sign up for their updates. It's very brief to sign in pro when they encourage that. We've been talking with healthcare providers as well that work with the immigrant community locally that are interested in providing testimony when that bill comes up for a hearing. So we're going to be sending targeted emails out to folks to ask them to provide remote testimony as well. So I think it's important to have immigrant community members who would be directly impacted and also professionals who can speak to the impact they're seeing as well. So yeah, I mean, if someone wants to testify, they're certainly welcome to do that, but even just signing in pro is helpful.
Man, I can't tell you how much I've learned just in, I mean, this has been going on for 1 hour and 1 minute, and I've learned more in this hour than I think I've learned in all of 2023 so far. This has been tremendously informative. But you
It's
don't know
cool.
what you
It's
don't
cool to see
know,
people
right?
not accepting the status quo. And I think one of the big things I've learned with Wyson is like things aren't given, they're taken. Like rights and they're taken. And
Hey, this is what I put in my signature of my emails. Power is
really,
taken, it is not given. I love it.
yeah, yep. And so I think I never really realized that, and so have gotten to learn that from working with them. So yeah.
Well, I also don't want to keep you forever, but I just want
Thanks
to
for having
kind
me.
of give you the floor. Let us know what you want to leave us with today, and we will have you on proper. This was impromptu because the legislators is going on, and as I was saying at the beginning of the show, I am now directing my gaze into politics and trying to elevate and inform others through this platform. And so I'm going on this journey and taking everyone with me. But
Yeah.
what do you want to leave people with?
I think for folks that are, I mean, in and around Kitsap, like there's great ways to support our immigrant neighbors. And some of those ways is, if you're a landlord, be a flexible landlord and call us if you want help interpreting with your tenant, but be willing to rent to somebody if you don't share language with them, or if it's, I don't know, if it's hard to verify their income with the normal documents, but they have income and they've been paying an expensive rent somewhere else, like why not rent to a family that really, really needs it? That's absolutely going to make their rent payments. So I think being a landlord, if you're hiring someone to clean your house, do your lawn care, that's awesome. It's putting money often in the pockets of immigrant families. Get to know that person. That's an opportunity to have like a one-on-one interaction. And we have volunteers here who have built friendships with lawn care providers and like helped interpret for them with their taxes appointments, or like helped connect them to kayak for services, or when one was in the detention center, helped raise money for his bond to get out. Like I think having someone who's working for you doing something like that is an opportunity for a relationship. Like there's a lot of folks that are our neighbors that have different backgrounds than we do, and there's a lot of ways to get to know folks. So Also, we always need volunteers. We run off of volunteers. If you want to be a driver for taking people to appointments, if you want to tutor people for their citizenship interview, those are needs that we have, even if you don't speak Spanish. If you're an accountant and you want to help people file taxes, we have a waiting list every year of tons of people who want to file taxes, and we don't have enough people to do taxes. New programs grow as we have volunteers that want to take them on, and kayak's a good place to get involved if you want to just one-off volunteer every once in a while, especially if you speak Spanish. We will put you to work as much as you want interpreting. But even if you don't speak Spanish, then there's ways that are really important to our work to volunteer. So go to our website and find info there.
All right. Well, man, I appreciate you so much for coming on. We will have you on proper where it's just talking about kayak. But I want to bring on our next guest while you're still on. Thank you so much, Kelly. Olson, coming from Silver Survival. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I'm so glad that you came on. Do you know Annika Turner from Kayak?
No, I don't.
I haven't met you before. Nice to meet you. I'm
Nice to meet
definitely
you as
familiar
well.
with the organization. Yeah.
Good.
Cool.
So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do also, is just making sure as informal and as in passing as possible, is just introducing people to each other. We're all in the same community, especially here in Kitsap County. So there's no reason for us not to know each other. And so, man, we could do what we want, right? That's why we work in these organizations, so we could change the game and do something different. So I really appreciate you for coming on in short notice. You didn't even have 24-hour notice and you came on. You're awesome. Let me give you a horn and applause.
Good to meet you all. All right, you guys have a good one.
All right, have a good one. Thank you so much. All right, Kelly, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm doing great. Just busy and excited to be here, and just a lot going on.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and do my top of the hour. Everyone, if you're joining us, I'm Arwan Cameron. This is the Conduit. Today is our Conduit Legislative Roundup. You have heard from La Resistencia and Maru Mora and what is happening right now in the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma. You have all the ways to advocate and get involved there. And we had Annika Turner come on from Kayak. And now in the second hour, we're shifting to civil survival. And I have to make a correction because I was calling it prison reform, but it's actually justice reform is really the terminology. Is that correct, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, prison reform is fine. Civil survival tends to focus a little bit more on reentry issues. And so, there is a lot of different bills going on. And so our priority tends to be reentry. We do support a lot of the other prison reform bills going on, and we do have one going on. So it's either one works. It's fine.
So if you don't mind, will you just start off with telling us a little bit on, what is civil survival and what do you do?
Sure. So Civil Survival Project is a small organization, although we're getting bigger. I think we have 12 people working with us now, but the organization was found by our director, Tara Simmons, and another attorney named Amanda Dubois. And really is about facing and dealing with the barriers that those of us who have been incarcerated, like myself, face as we try to reenter society. So I think there's something like, somebody did a study, there's something like 40,000 collateral consequences of having a criminal record. And so our director, Tara, had gone to law school and then was not allowed to sit for the bar and had to take it to the Supreme Court, and decided to start this organization to help work on getting rid of some of those collateral consequences. And the biggest way to do that is to change the laws that are actually holding us back. So we started off really initially focused on changing laws at the legislature, and that's still a huge focus of what we do. But we've also added a reentry legal aid project due to some of the bills that we passed that brings relief for people who have legal financial obligations that they owe. We've been able to pass some laws so that people can get relief from that. At this point, though, you really do need, you can do it yourself, but it helps to have legal counsel. And so we have 5 attorneys now that are helping people get relief from their financial obligations. So we kind of have 2 arms. The one arm that's helping people directly get relief through the court systems, and then the policy side, which is where I am working to change the laws.
So that's a lot, right? And I have experience with civil survival because they were prominent at OC when I was teaching there, which I thought was fantastic because that is education is one of the best and fastest ways to change a person's outcome and their trajectory to take care of themselves and their family. So I just thought it was awesome that civil survival was there, and that's when I first met Tara and several other folks that were part of civil survival, and it's just gotten stronger from there because that was back in like 2013. So it's been around for a while and it's doing some great things. Why don't I transition here to some of the House bills that are important to civil survival, and let's get into that. I believe one is House Bill 1024 concerning labor and income of incarcerated persons. Can you go into that for me?
Yeah, so that's a bill that we're definitely excited about. We've been referring it to as the Real Labor, Real Wages Act, but it's really looking at essentially the forced labor and the amount of money that people are being paid while they're currently incarcerated. And so, if you really take a look at it, I mean, prison labor really is an extension of the 13th Amendment, right? It's kind of a slavery loophole, or it's forcing people into forced labor. And so currently in our prisons, most people are making less than $1 an hour, and there's a cap of like $55 a month, which really just barely people still are responsible for buying things for themselves inside prisons, on their commissary, writing home, having phone calls, all these types of things. And so the bill was a bold bill to begin with. One of the things that happens with the legislature is you don't often get everything that you ask for. And so a lot of times you'll want to start off asking for, the sun and the moon and everything that you want. And so the bill is a very aggressive and bold bill, asking to bring the wages up to minimum wage from like 42 cents an hour up to minimum wage. The other thing it does is it currently you can be infracted, which means that you can lose good time. There's all these different kinds of things that can happen to you if you refuse to work. So it gets rid of that. It's unlikely that we will get all the way up to minimum wage, but we are hoping to get at least a raise for people. We want to continue fighting until we do get up to minimum wage, but we're understanding that with everything going on in budget world and all of that kind of stuff, that we likely will not get exactly what we're asking for. But we do want to, one, bring attention to this issue of, the fact that we're forcing people to work 40 hours a week at 42 cents an hour, and bring in some relief for them. The other big part of it was having a savings account. So we looked at this as a reentry issue, having people be able to earn more money and build in a savings account so that when they are released, they have a foundation to start off with. Currently, you're given $40 at the gate, and that's it. And so we really would like to see people be able to build up a savings, have access to, it'll help them with access to housing, to transportation, to just kind of take some time and really have a successful reentry.
Kelly, let me ask you. I just want to paint this picture here. Tell me if I'm wrong here, right? So you're saying that typically a person who's incarcerated is making 42 cents an hour, whatever time they're locked up, right, incarcerated. Let's call it 2 years, right? And during that 2 years, they're using that 42 cents to buy deodorant and food and toiletries and other things like that, which, if I'm not mistaken, still cost about the same amount as on the outside. Is that true?
Costs more.
Oh, it
They
costs more.
mark it up. I don't
Okay.
have the list in front of me, but yeah, it's a little bit of a racket actually. There
So
is
let me keep painting the picture. So 42 cents an hour, right? So if you're working 40 hours, we're talking about what, 16 bucks a week, right? And it's a markup on these things. So deodorant is, 3.50 for the deodorant I use, so maybe it's $5, right? So over 2 years, I mean, you're doing a miracle if you were able to save $100. You get released, they give you $40, and they typically will put you on probation, if I'm not mistaken. So you go back to the place of the crime, the origin. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it really depends. It gets a little bit confusing. Not everybody who gets released from prison is on. We refer to it as community custody,
Mm-hmm.
but not everybody has community custody. When I was released, I didn't have any
Okay.
requirements for community
So
custody.
on community custody or not, you got $40 in your pocket, and whatever meager savings you were able to save at 42 cents an hour, and it's like, okay, find housing, find food, find work, and who's going to give you a chance? You have no rental history, you're previously incarcerated, right? So what do we want these folks to do, and then not have a rate of recidivism at the same time? Like, what are the choices? If I don't have family, if I don't have friends, if I've been locked down for a long time, and they've moved on, or that was a very toxic environment and I can't go back to that, what am I supposed to do?
Exactly. Or even, just getting yourself a phone so you can get a job. Um, access to transportation, so again, so you can get employment and get access to housing. And the other thing, out of that 42 cents, you also are paying, they're taking money out of that for your legal financial obligations, for child support, all of that. So you're, even at the
They're
42
taking your
cents.
child support from 42 cents an hour? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I laugh because it's so ridiculous. And I
Mhm.
don't think people realize that. And they say, hey, pull yourself up from your bootstraps. Or they say, well, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And that's not helpful, right? The
Mm.
situation is a situation. So what are we going to do to help folks integrate back into society? And I use that in quotes, uh, so that they can thrive, take care of themselves, take care of their families, and not be put in a position to where they feel like they don't have any options, and this is what I have to do for survival.
Exactly. And I think that it also it takes a toll on your mental health to come out and have to constantly essentially have your hand out asking for help every time you turn around. And so, the people inside want to work, they want to earn their own money, they want to pay for themselves. And it really, so it affects so many different areas of your life, not just the tangible things, but I think the intangible things about how you have hope and how you start to rebuild your self-esteem and start to rebuild your life.
I don't think that we do a good enough job kind of articulating that piece of it, right? And it has such a stigma associated with justice impacted people, that on the other side, it's really hard. And as it is difficult for folks that are out here, and the terminology that folks will say, well, I did everything right, I didn't make these bad choices or whatever, and so I'm struggling. So maybe I feel for this, population of people, but I'm trying to figure out how to survive. That can't be the answer, right? We literally are all in this together. And so I really would encourage folks to really investigate and dig deep on what that looks like. And so for all folks that are justice impacted, they're a son, a daughter, a father, a mother, and there has to be a way, a path of redemption to reintegrate and enter into society, if you will, in that way. What do you think? Am I saying something wrong? Do I need to work on my verbiage, or
No, no, I think you're 100% right. And, so oftentimes people who end up in prison, what, they really needed at some point was some healing. They're typically survivors of trauma. There's obviously the racism, the systemic racism that's rooted into our criminal legal system. That has affected generation after generation. It's often people who are already living in poverty. Um, and so, there's just so much healing that needs to happen. And we're the only country that really locks up as many people as we do. Most other countries have moved to more restorative type justice, or just don't essentially lock people up for as much as the United States does. I think that I don't remember the exact statistic, but we make up like 5% of the total world's population, and we make up like 25% of people who are incarcerated.
And what's interesting is when we look around at other countries, we see that they don't incarcerate their people at near the levels, and they don't have the crime, to the levels that we do. But somehow it just seems like we have this American exceptionalism that won't allow us to look and say, okay, look, this country's doing this and this happens to work. So why don't we try that? That this is clearly working for them. Maybe we modify it for our situation, as unique as it may be, but we can do better.
Yeah, they have been looking a little bit, like Norway in particular, has some really great results. And I would say the biggest difference, if you look at their system, there's actually a documentary on Netflix called Breaking the Cycle that compares our two systems. And it's really about actually treating people like humans, which is quite a concept. The US seems so focused on kind of like this punishment and punitive and method as far as dealing with our criminal legal system, versus getting to the root of the issues of how somebody ended up in a position that they committed the crime in the first place.
Now, I missed a question in the chat a little bit ago, and it says, and they get punished for not working. Is that right? So that may be in regards to while they're detained or once they're released.
Just while they're retained. So you have the option, you're given a sentence, and usually you can get time off your sentence for good behavior, different types of things. And so you can you can lose that good time. You can, I know our director has talked about, she was threatened with not being able to visit with her kids on the weekend if she didn't go to work. You can be put into the hole or solitary confinement for refusing to work. So it really is forced labor. Most people do, I think, want to work, but the idea of, being forced is really just an attachment to slavery.
Well, and how I understand it is, companies like Victoria's Secret and furniture companies were using prison labor. That sound right? I don't know if they're still doing that.
Yeah, well, the state has, it's called Correctional Industries, and they do furniture building, and it definitely is a complicated issue. They do supply a lot of the furniture to a lot of state agencies. It's open for bid, but the fact that Correctional Industries is able to use inmate labor, they come in at the cheapest of everybody. And so I know I know the mayor of Monroe signed in and testified in favor of this bill, and his city won't use them as long as they continue to pay, these substandard wages. And other state agencies are starting to take stands against this too, but we need everybody to come on board.
Well, and here's the deal, right? So now you've given, a person this knowledge, skills, and abilities in building furniture, but there's no job for them on when they get out, right? Because they're not going to pay. I was getting you for 24 cents an hour. I'm not paying you $18 an hour now. I'm just going to keep using the prison labor that I have. So that time is so wasted in not giving, folks a way to, hey, you know what? I'm going to get these knowledge, skills, and abilities. I'm not going to have to make these decisions once I'm out, and I'm going to be able to live and take care of myself and my family, as I said before. Let me go ahead and show this statement from Tara, where she was
I think it was when she
speaking.
read the bill. She did a really good job.
Yes, and just to show you, here is a comment form for House Bill 1024. Again, super easy to do it. Now, of course, I'm on my computer, so I have autofill, so this might seem like cheating, but you too can do it really easy, right? Just your address, your city, state, zip code, your name, confirm your email, your phone number, whether or not you support, oppose, or you're neutral. Of course, I support it. And then putting a note in there. And I think that note is really important. And then send. It is really that simple. So even if you don't have a note, again, that's another vote in support, right? It's that fast. It's that fast. So I really encourage people to do that. But let's go ahead and let me get this video ready for us here really quick. Just give me a second. And let me play that. I'm so thankful for you joining us today. Again, our guest is Kelly Olson from Civil Survival. You are joining us for our legislative roundup here on the Conduit. We're so thankful that you've joined us today. A lot of really important things are happening right now in Olympia, and your voice needs to be heard. But you need to know what's going on so that you can lend your voice. So let's go ahead and get into this here.
And reentry to recognize as the vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is a step forward in trying to solve many problems at once. It is a work in progress. I know I'm going to continue to work with Department of Corrections and other colleagues in the Appropriations Committee to try and achieve the goals of the bill, which is to increase crime victim compensation restitution to victims, also increase amounts going for child support, and also make sure that people have money in savings for when they reenter from incarceration. So, it's really tied to the forced prison labor and valuing human labor, all human labor, and wanting to make sure that people are paid fairly for the labor that they're doing inside prisons and meet our goals. So I respectfully ask everyone to vote yes.
Thank you. Any further comments? Sure. Public hearings on bills that have been referred to this committee today.
Thank you. I am Representative Tara Simmons from the 23rd Legislative District, which is Bremerton, Paulsbo, Bainbridge Island, and parts of unincorporated Kitsap County.
Thank you, and welcome our vice chair, the only formerly incarcerated member of the legislature. I'm not sure if there are any other formerly incarcerated members of legislatures around the country. Are you the only? There's one other.
So there's a couple more now. Since I got elected, we've been working to get other people in other states. So I think we have 3 now. So
well, yeah. Welcome, and let's hear more about you.
This is really cool to be here in person finally. I remember coming down to the legislature and testifying before this committee so many years before I got elected. And this is my first time actually in person getting to testify before you. So thank you, Mr. Chair and Assistant Ranking Member Mossbrucker and all of my colleagues. It is a burden and a blessing both to be the first formerly incarcerated legislator in our nation. And this issue caused me a lot of trauma when I was incarcerated. And I think that's why I'm here, is to bring my lived experience into this magical space where we can actually implement change. Today, you'll hear about the 13th Amendment to our United States Constitution and how slavery was abolished except for punishment for a crime. And that's what's going on today in Washington State. People are still being punished with forced labor because they have committed some kind of offense. And those offenses are often rooted in mental health and substance use disorder. And this is the way our legislature has gone for many years, is to decide that people who have mental health issues and substance use disorder are criminals, and we're going to put them in prison instead of get them health care, and then we're going to force them into labor. Many people, in the legislature it's easier to think that people in prison are bad people. It doesn't take much thought or nuance in our thinking to think that way. And maybe they deserve this kind of punishment. But I'm here to tell you that 95% of the women that I was incarcerated with were victims of severe childhood abuse, sexual assault, and trafficking, and so many other things. And they don't deserve this type of punishment. There's also a lack of programming in prison. We don't have a lot of no access to mental health care, really. And so when I was in prison, I spent my time self-organizing with other women to do things like celebrate recovery, Bible studies, crocheting circles, and things like that. And that's really what helped me heal. But the DOC will have you work at with threats if you do not work for 42 cents an hour in the kitchen or in the custodial unit or in the laundry room, and you will get a major infraction. And that means you can go to solitary confinement. But for me, what that meant is that I couldn't see my kids. My kids came to visit every weekend. And if I did not do what they said and work for 42 cents an hour, then I could not see my children. And so I think, that coercion is really tied to the 13th Amendment and the abolishment of slavery, and how we have said we're not going to have people be slaves unless we're going to force you because you've committed an offense. This bill, and I also want to give another example of what $55 a month will get you in prison. First of all, the maximum you can get for class 3 jobs is $55 a month, but then that's deducted by LFOs, child support, cost of incarceration, all this other things. So you might come out with like $25 a month. And for a menstruating woman who needs to buy tampons on the commissary, because when I was there, feminine hygiene products were very subpar if you got them. And if you had a heavy flow, you had to go to the doctor and pay a medical copay to go to the doctor, and then hope that the doctor would believe you that you needed more. So many of us had to buy tampons on the commissary, which is $6 a box. Then we have to buy our own deodorant, Q-tips, shampoo, conditioner, soap. And to do that on $25 a month when you're working, 40 hours a week at 42 cents an hour, I think is just inhumane. So this bill actually, I'm trying to actually make everybody whole. So it's about supporting victims too, because I was a victim long before I was ever a prisoner. And I want people to be able to earn their money so they can pay their restitution, so they can also send money back home to support their children, but then also have savings. So when they come out of prison, they're not released with $40 and a bus ticket. They can pay for housing and transportation and actually have a fighting chance of not coming back. That is community safety. That is making sure people don't go back to working in the underground economy and have a fighting chance. And so I'm trying to do this because what I've heard in the last couple of years from some of my colleagues is they don't want to give people housing vouchers. They don't want to give people food stamps. They don't want to give people things. Well, let's let them earn something so when they come home, they have those things. So I am really just asking my colleagues here to work with me. I know that this bill is not perfect. I have talked with the Department of Corrections. I'm willing to modify and actually increase the amount that we give to restitution to victims and to child support, maybe play with those numbers a little bit. But I would really hope that some of my colleagues across the aisle would open your heart and understand that people in prison, we're all victims first, and that this policy is egregious and that we can work together to change it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well stated.
All right. I think that's a powerful testimony there by our own Tara Simmons, which is fantastic. And that really does speak to the point, right? I think this is really important. Do you have an idea on whether or not Congress is leaning toward adopting this House bill? Is there political will for this? Is there, where's the wind blowing?
Well, it always comes down to how are we going to pay for this? And it is the state legislature
State legislature, yes.
that will be deciding this. So, ironically, there were definitely members, especially last year, that talked about actually raising the wages. But at this point, it's passed out of the policy committee, and it's just had a hearing on Monday in the appropriations committee. And as Representative Simmons was talking about in her intro of the bill that she's working with Department of Corrections. I think that there is will to get something passed. It will probably be just a raise of maybe $1 to $2. So not a giant, not what we were looking for or what we are hoping for. A lot of times what we have found in the legislature is that it's slow to move. So, important part of it was starting this conversation and then chipping away at things and coming back and getting more and getting people to understand. I mean, the people who make these laws are the people in the legislature. Not all of them understand fully kind of the depths or the breadth of the collateral consequences that we go through, and it takes us sharing our stories. I, for one, it took me like 10 years after prison before I actually got involved in advocacy. I really just wanted to kind of put my head down and like stay on a straight and narrow path and not get in trouble. And, I didn't matter. I came out and got 2 degrees. It didn't matter. I couldn't get jobs or housing. And, I watched Tara's story and really learned the importance of those of us who are out here who can to share our stories, to get involved, to use our voices, to actually enact change. And it's hard. There's a lot of trauma that we've experienced, and coming out and sharing our stories of having been to prison is, not something you necessarily feel like talking about every day. But once I started to realize how important it was, I realized that it really is necessary if we're going to um, enact any type of change.
So, would you mind, Kelly, just speaking from your own experience? What was it that got you over the hump? Right, it was so difficult. Like you said, folks won't hire you. You're seeking education. What was it? That can be inspiration and encouragement to others that are going through this or going to be going through this soon.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I think, came down to one, being able to deal with my mental health and start to heal from some of the traumas of my own past. I was fortunate that I had family I could live with when I immediately came out. I also relied on education. I came out and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. However, I will also say that even with those degrees, I still faced a tremendous amount of discrimination. Even getting a job at the state, I was forced through a lot of trauma investigation, all this type of stuff, just to have a job that I had there. So probably the biggest thing was really building a foundation of my own mental health and my own support to be able to kind of withstand that. Um, and then the next biggest thing was really getting involved with other community members who are having the same fight and who are going through the same issues and can understand the struggle that you're going through. Because as much sympathy as my family had for me, having not gone through the amount of discrimination, it was difficult for them to understand why I still struggled to get gainful employment, even with a master's degree. And you shouldn't have to do that. Education is not necessarily the path for everybody. I think everybody should be able to get a living wage job. It was just a place that helped me find my voice, um, and continuing to, be persistent, build those relationships in the community. I did a lot of volunteering, which is not easy to do either. That's a lot of time to put in to basically work for free to get experience. So, my goal is to hopefully build better opportunities for people than necessarily the path that I went down.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I know that can be tremendously difficult. Now, I know that this is not the only House bill that you're advocating for during this legislative session. So, are there some other ones that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, there's several, and um, and most of the ones on our priority list did start out at House bills, but we do support Senate bills too. But so we have House Bill 1169, which is around legal financial obligations. This is an area where we've done a lot of work on. Civil Survival has, to get rid of some of the fees and fines and just the debts that people incur as being part of the criminal legal system. And so we were able to get rid of most of the mandatory fees and fines. The only ones that were left is there's a victim penalty assessment, which is $500, and a DNA fee that is $100. And the victim penalty assessment actually goes to the crime victim advocates in the prosecutor's office that support crime victims for who've had a crime perpetrated against them, and so it supports them through the process, through the court system, and all of that kind of important part of things. And so one of the things with the LFOs is that most people can't pay them, so they go uncollected. There's probably only about like 20 or 30% is actually collected. So most of this debt is not collected. And what we really want to do is just eliminate them and fund those services from the state so that we don't get rid of the services, but we just backfill them. Because what we find is that there's a term or phrase that's often used, which is we're spending dollars to collect dimes. And so, we shouldn't be funding our court systems on the backs of poor people. And it also really, disproportionately affects people of color. There's a lot of things that the LFOs get in the way of. So like you can't vacate your record or anything like that until you've paid off all of your LFOs. So this bill would get rid of the last 2 mandatory fees, and it would also give a guarantee funding to the counties to still provide those services. So that's an important bill.
That's huge. So let me jump in, and we have a little bit of testimony from Tara on that. Are you okay on time?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So again, everyone, thank you for joining us today. This is the Conduit Legislative Roundup. We're talking about House bills and Senate bills right now. My guest is the great Kelly Olson from Civil Survival, and we're talking about House Bill 1169 right now. So let's go ahead and check in with Tara again on this. Again, there's so many ways to get involved, and I encourage you to, we're trying to bring this stuff to you because it may be difficult. Like, where do I start? Where do I go? So we can bring this information to you. We can bring the subject matter experts to you so that you can get informed, get educated, and hopefully it may stir you to action. And there's so many different things to get activated about. So if this particular issue doesn't float your boat, there's going to be another one that does. Again, I want to bring attention to what's happening in the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, live. So please check that out. But let's go ahead and listen to Tara again here.
Serving on this committee. Sorry, I have a little cold today. I'm losing my voice, but I'm COVID free, just so you know. For the record, I'm Tara Simmons from the Best District, the 23rd, same as the chair. Back again for another attempt at eliminating the scheme of monetary sanctions to fund our court system. I want to mention that the Chief Justice Gonzalez spoke about this in the State of the Judiciary this year. Last year, we made a lot of progress with House Bill 1412, but this very important policy was stripped out of that bill in the other chamber. I also want to flag that although it came out of this committee on party lines, I want to thank the good member from the 16th who voted for it in appropriations and on the House floor last year. Also want to say I'm really glad that we have a public defender here on this committee with the new member from the 18th. So I hope that you can share with the rest of the legislature the impact that these LFOs have on individuals long after they've paid their sentence and serve their time, and how they can't vacate their criminal record until they pay them off. And some people are on Social Security disability and can never pay it off, and so they lack access to housing and employment and all these other things. I want to also note for the record that there's no opposition to this bill, because I've worked closely with victims, prosecutors, law enforcement, AOC, and so many stakeholders. And so this is really about freeing up county clerks from having to enforce these debts that they cannot collect on, and instead providing a sustainable source for victim services and the DNA collection. This will free up county clerks to actually enforce restitution against an individual and help victims more, and not have to spend so much time trying to enforce on poor people who can't pay. And with that, I just ask for your support again this year.
Thank you. Question to the Prime Sponsor? Are you nodding in my direction? Okay, Representative Cheney.
Thank you. I guess my question is this would this bill change it to be waivable fees under a Blazina analysis, or would this completely delete those fees? And the reason I ask this, it seems like there might be a dichotomy between Blazina and its progeny and those who can financially be able to do this, perhaps private retained clients and things like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is just getting rid of it for ease and efficiency. As you probably know, under Blazina, you can never waive these two. So even people on Social Security disability that you can't collect on, they still sit there dead forever, and the county clerks continue to send out monthly notices and waste time and money and postage. And so this was actually a deal with clerks and prosecutors, and like, let's just get rid of this scheme on these two mandatories, because these funds are really important. It's important to have victim services, and let's just fund that, because to try and do the math, I mean, I think it's a small amount of people that actually retain counsel and have money. Most of the people going through the system rely on public defense. So it was just too difficult to do the math and figure that out.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear.
All right, so I'm gonna stop it there. I wanted to get in one question just to kind of see where their mindset was, and then the information that she's given on the other side. So often people don't really think of the ramifications. They're so enamored with people must pay, right? They have to pay their debt to society, that they're not looking at the impact, and that it's doing just so much of a negative. Also, I want to mention all of these videos are on the Conduit also. So if you want to catch up that way, where you don't have to sift through and try to figure it out, shout out to Jeff. He's taken painstaking time to take snippets out so you can go directly to the information and catch yourself up. Do you want to just speak to this bill 1169? Any other things that you wanted to add there? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, actually, this was a quote from a hearing yesterday that was actually there's another bill regarding youth fees and fines and getting rid of them for youth. But one of the youth that testified just really talked about the fact, because one of the things that the members who are against this type of relief is that that the only way people can really show remorse for their actions or any kind of accountability is through this financial, through some sort of financial contribution. And, the youth really shared that, being able to write a check does not show remorse or, bring any kind of accountability. So I think that that's really important, that we don't just tie, people who come from privilege and have the money to just pay it off right away. It doesn't mean that they learned anything either from what they did, or that they have any more remorse than somebody who doesn't have the money to pay. And so I think that's just an important thing to think about as we try to, essentially add all these monetary sanctions onto people through the criminal legal system.
Yeah, that is very informative. So we've got House Bill 1024. We've got House Bill 1169. What's some other bills that you're advocating for this season?
Another one that is a little bit different for us is the solitary confinement bill, which is 1087. And what this one does is it limits the amount of time that somebody can be in solitary confinement. Essentially the United Nations has said that any more than 10 days in solitary confinement is torture. And we still are placing people for a crazy amount of time in solitary confinement. And so we're advocating that no more than 15 consecutive days and no more than 45 days in a calendar year be spent in solitary confinement. It really is, essentially it's taking away all your senses. You don't have any interactions with any people. You're just in a cell. And what that does, what it's been shown to do to people and their mental health, it creates an extreme amount of trauma for people. It really changes their whole being, that some people are not really able to even come back after having spent so much time. And we have people that have literally spent decades in solitary confinement. And it's torture, and we need to stop doing it.
If you don't mind, Kelly, I'm going to share my testimony on this. And folks that have been subscribers to the Conduit for a while know some of this story. But my brother, Thomas Cameron, has spent a lot of time in prison, both federal and state prisons. And in that, um, I don't know if it was in order to keep himself safe, but sometimes he would do things to get put into solitary confinement, so that he wouldn't be raped, or beat on or outnumbered. And this was my brother was a jack dude, right? He could fight, he could defend himself. And in that, there were instances which was shared with us, of him spreading his own feces on the window and the door of the cell, um, and not wanting the correctional officers to come in. And the only reason why I know that story is my brother was arrested on 9/11 in 2019, and within an hour of him being in the Kent holding cell, he was found hung dead in that cell. And while there are cameras in that cell, um, let's just say it was quite suspicious on how this all took place. My brother had a lot going for him. Things were doing well. He was well to do. He wasn't in distress. There was no signs or notes that he wanted to take his own life. And so, regardless of what we believe on if he actually did take his life or there was something nefarious that took place, the thing is if you say that he took his life, then what he's looking at is, I can't do any more time in that system, and I'm going to take myself out, and I'm going to go out on my own choices. And to make that decision on such a split, right, less than an hour in a holding cell, right? We have all the records. I did a Freedom of Information Act. It's all here on the Conduit for you to see. But what you're talking about is that torture is what my brother went through for years in solitary confinement. And as a loved one on the outside and being helpless on, well, what can we do? How do we support? He was shipped to prisons all over this country. And so he had no contact with family members and things like that. It's cost prohibitive for us to fly out and visit him. And that's my testimony on that. And so one of the justifications that the Kent police made of why they did what they did, in regards to how long it took for them to get help to him, was they said, well, when he wasn't responsive, what they did was they said they had to go and get the riot gear and get dressed up to go in because he had spread feces in prison. Well, how do you know that when this man has only been in a holding cell for an hour? How do you have that detail? Like, that's very interesting. And that he's dangerous and he was going to attack the police. And so this was all used in their justification on why it took so long to get into the cell. And then they said, oh, yeah, we tried to render, medical aid, and we know how those things go. So that is, this bill definitely, to me, is very important. And I will be definitely speaking up on this one in regards to making my voice heard.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm sorry about the loss of your brother.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, we're coming to the top of our hour, and I'd so appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. Are there a few more bills that you wanted to talk
Yeah,
about?
I'll go over them just really quickly, and I think you guys can put links on your um, website. But there's 1174, which is improving access to for voting for people who are in jail. So most people, we passed the bill so that everybody outside prison walls are able to vote. And we want to make sure that people who are sitting in jail who have not been convicted of a crime are receiving their ballots and are able to exercise their right to vote. Um,
Now, is
and
that one not on the books yet? Because I thought I
it's,
read something where they could.
yeah, so we changed the law. It went into effect in 2023. It used to be that you had to be outside of prison and off of community custody before
Mm.
you could have your right to vote. And we changed it so that as soon as you're released from prison, you have your right to vote back. There's no strings tied to it whatsoever. However, part of doing that also, we want to make sure that people in jail have access to their ballots. And it's not necessarily been a priority of the jails to make sure that people are getting their ballots and are being able to exercise their right to vote. And so we want to make sure that people do have that right and that the jails are equipped to get them their ballots and allow them to vote. So essentially, it's just kind of creating a requirement for the jails to make it possible, make it happen. We did some outreach this last voting cycle, and we're able to go in. We went into the Kitsap County Jail and helped people register to vote, and it was great to be in there. And so it hasn't always been a priority for the jails, and it's something that we want them to for it to be in statute so that they're required to do it. And then the other bill I can go over really quick too is 1492. This is the providing relief for people who had a Blake. I don't know if you guys have done anything on that, but there was the Supreme Court decision that ruled that the drug possession law was unconstitutional.
Please go into that one. Let's take a little time there to unpack that because this is really impacting our unhoused population, especially here in Bremerton. So yes, please take some time on that one.
Okay. So there's a couple of different ones around Blake. So first of all, for those who are watching and don't know, the Blake decision essentially made possession of a controlled substance unconstitutional. And so what that meant was, one, it changed the law so you cannot be charged for possession of a drug. And then it also meant that anybody who had been charged for a possession charge needs to have their charge vacated, and they need to have any fees or fines refunded to them that they paid. And this goes all the way back to like 1971 or something like that, when that law was put on the books. So yeah, there's kind of two components to that. So there are some bills around. So what happened when the Supreme Court decision passed was, and this was 2 years ago, the legislature made a new law that essentially made it so that if you were caught with possession of a drug, that you needed to be referred to treatment at least 2 times, and then after that you could be charged with a misdemeanor. And that law sunsets this year. And so a big battle that will be going on that we're not necessarily in the middle of is whether or not they're going to recriminalize drug possession or not. So there are legislators that are working on that. We'll probably weigh in on it a little bit. But the bill that we're specifically talking about is what happens to everybody who had these charges and is owed this money back. Because what's happening is throughout our state, people are looking to get their refunds, getting their records vacated, and it's not being handled in a uniform manner across our state. And so some counties are handling it different than others. And so the bill that we're working on is the cleanup of this decision and making sure that people are getting what's owed to them. And then, like I said, there will be another bill that'll be focusing on whether or not they choose to recriminalize, which there does look like there's a push to do that. We'll probably be pushing against that, but
So let me ask you, Kelly, when you're talking about recriminalizing drug possession, is this for marijuana also?
I would need to look at it. That, like I said, I've been focused on the one going backwards, so I haven't been very focused on the recriminalization of it, because that's not an area that we're super focused on or have the capacity. And the bills that we are working on, we get into the weeds of, and so it takes a lot to. So I would not want to answer that one without being fully.
I asked that question just because this seems really dangerous for people in regards to, okay, it was decriminalized for a time, which, kind of removes the stigma. And so, folks are, using drugs or possessing drugs, and then you recriminalize it. It's almost like a trap. You know what I mean? So this seems really dangerous. And I'm in the chat. It says Bremerton is recasting it as public use. So this, so what it's not that it's illegal to have the drug possession, but the use in public is a criminal offense. So that's kind of the workaround with the law. So can you speak to that on how it's like folks may have the misnomer of, well, no, it was decriminalized, but then the government kind of circumvents the law and still finds a way to criminalize people.
Yeah, well, I think that that's part of the reason why the legislature needs to find a fix that's statewide, because then we start to get into a pretty dangerous territory of essentially like justice by geography. If we have Bremerton that's doing this, Tacoma that's doing this, Yakima that's doing this, then you start running into these areas where it could be different wherever. So,
all right, well, I appreciate that. I wanted to welcome on Paulo Nunez. And Paulo, say your last name for me. I'd never known how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's Nunez Bueno.
Bueno.
Yeah.
Bueno.
Yeah, it's simpler than you'd think when you're looking at it. It's just Bueno.
So Paulo is from Front and Center. Kelly is with us from Civil Survival. I wanted to introduce the two of you. And Paulo, we're still finishing up on this, but if you have something to add in here, please feel free to do so. As we are at the top of the hour at 3 p.m., we just want to welcome everyone that has been watching us for the last 2 hours here, and all of you that are just joining us now. Paulo, go ahead and refresh your screen because you have only one bar, so your internet signal isn't great. You are watching the Conduit. This is our legislative roundup. And at 1 o'clock, we were talking about what's going on in Tacoma right now, in the Northwest Detention Center, with the detainees, those that are being detained, being tear gassed, the marches that are taking place today, tomorrow, and Sunday, and how you can get involved with that, and the House bills and Senate bills that are associated with that. Now we're talking about prison reform with Kelly, and we're going to get into transportation equity with Paulo. So we got a full slate today. We're going to finish up our conversation on prison reform. I wanted to go ahead and play this video. Paulo, are you in a hurry? Because what I can do, if you are short on time, I can come to transportation and come back. You're good?
I'm good.
All right. I appreciate you. Let me give you the horn. Paulo got the email just a few hours ago, and I told him I was going to send it yesterday. So your flexibility is awesome. I appreciate you. So let me go ahead and play this video here so we can get some context, and then we'll come back after the video.
Marwan, I'm not sure if other folks have the same thing, but I can't hear the video.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix that then. That happens from time to time. Everything is great, and then it's not. All right, let me start that over just a little bit there. Is that better?
Civil Survival Project, representing indigent clients in obtaining Blake relief and providing self-help for people who want to try to obtain relief on their own. I've worked on Blake cases in dozens of counties and municipalities throughout the state. Every single one of them has its own process and wildly different understandings of which LFOs are affected. For example, in a recent case, a prosecutor prepared an order vacating my client's conviction for simple possession, but did not address LFOs, even though the prosecutor agreed the LFOs should be refunded. The prosecutor insisted the clerk would automatically know to refund those, but after the order was entered, the clerk told me she's unable to refund any LFO on the basis of that order. The end result is more litigation, which consumes the time of all parties involved. More importantly, it delays the justice to which my clients are entitled under Nelson v. Colorado and the refunds they desperately need. In the current landscape, obtaining relief is difficult and cumbersome for me, and I've been practicing law for 13 years. It's near impossible for non-lawyers to navigate when they try to obtain this constitutionally mandated relief on their own. House Bill 1492 addresses those problems, and I urge you to pass it.
Thank you. Can we hear from Camarina Zorozua, please?
Good morning. Camarina Zorozua, co-founder and legal director at The Way to Justice. We're a nonprofit civil legal aid organization based in Spokane. We serve justice-impacted individuals in Eastern Washington and across the state. Our mission is to empower communities through advocacy and access. We offer post-conviction relief through an equity lens to remove barriers to our clients so that we can address the collateral consequences of convictions. This helps our clients access services, housing, employment, and education opportunities without being seen as second-class citizens due to an old charge or conviction that is actually eligible for relief under statute or, in this case, under Blake. We do this by reducing legal fines that they owe, restoring their rights, and vacating convictions. We've vacated state v. Blake convictions in dozens of counties all across the state of Washington and have experienced the inconsistencies. Our work is focused on a holistic model. We center the individual needs of our clients. We have screened every individual who walks through our doors for Blake relief. Many of the people we come in contact with do not know that they have a qualifying case under Blake or that relief is available at all. Through this work, we've seen the harm caused by actually 50 years of the war on drugs, the impact on our clients, their families, their loved ones, and our communities. These harms have been disproportionately felt by people of color, those who have substance use disorders, mental health needs, and those living in poverty or homelessness. Due to the war on drugs, discrimination through policing, the targeting and criminalization of people of color throughout our justice system, biased and discretion given to prosecutors in their powerful positions that result in harsher sentencing, lack of sentencing
I'm
alternatives.
sorry, you're out of time. So you're pro on the bill, right?
For the most part, except for Section 3, we would like to express our concerns regarding ex parte entry of orders that would deprive defendants of notice and the impact that that may have on immigration proceedings in federal courts.
Thank you very much. That will conclude the public testimony and conclude the public hearing.
All right. So, just a few things that I wanted to note there is you really do need to practice your 3 minutes or your 1 minute or however much time that you have. It goes so quick and so fast. And sometimes you have 100, 200 people testifying and it's got to be a challenge to sit and listen to all those, but you're also trying to convince through those stories. So it is really important to prepare for that. Kelly, have you done that before?
Yeah, I've testified several times, so
Is it
it's
scary?
definitely it's not too bad. They're usually pretty good, but it is important to practice your time so you don't get over, and that you're concise.
Are there any opportunities to testify coming up?
I would need to look up the schedule. Trying to see where we are. We're in a weird place where we've moved out of the policy committees for most of these. There is a pardons bill on Monday. And I think actually the recriminalization of the Blake bill is also on Monday. If people want, and you can sign up to testify both remote or in person.
Okay, and I will put that in the chat here shortly. And so if folks want to get involved, is there another bill that you wanted to talk about? I just wanted to make sure I got them all.
No, that's good.
If folks wanted to get involved, how do they get involved with civil survival? If they don't necessarily want to get involved with civil survival, but they do want to provide testimony, can they come to civil survival and you'll walk them through it or refer them to where they need to go? What's the process for that?
You can share my email if folks want to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll have you type that. You're so fast. You already got it in the chat for me. You're cool. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share Kelly's email in the chat. So that is one way that you can get in touch. I'm also going to put Civil Survival's website here on the screen for everyone. They have been doing so much good work here in Kitsap County. There's videos here, legislation and advocacy. You see Tara Simmons there with what's that? Looks like Jay Inslee. How to get involved. There's so many things to advocate for, and either you or loved ones are justice impacted, and what that means. Trying to just live, pay your rent, go to work, eat, be healthy, provide for your family if you have one. It's so important. So I just encourage folks to get involved there. Go ahead, Kelly.
I did just put in the chat. We are having a lobby day on February 20th. So we will be down in Olympia. I put a link to it in the chat. You can register there, and if you're available, we'll have a program in the morning where we'll kind of teach people about the bill process, how to testify, and then in the afternoon we'll have appointments with your legislators. That is a really good opportunity to get involved.
Well, I'll give you a little secret, Kelly. G2 will be providing transportation to the youth for that event on that day, so I will see you there.
Okay, good. Look forward to
We're also going to document it, so we look
Awesome.
forward to seeing you in person. Well, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing all this information with us. It's so very important. And very illuminating. Again, I was telling Maru how much I've learned. Actually, I was telling Anika that, in an hour's time, I've learned more than I've learned the entire year. And now I'm 2 hours in, and my mind is blown by just the need and the advocacy for so many different groups. And there's something here for you to jump in and advocate for folks. And there's so many different things that you can do, writing letters, right, through PayPal, donating your time, doing a selfie, right?
Yeah.
I showed how easy it was to just sign up and make your comment. I mean, it's like literally seconds to do. And again, subscribe to the Conduit. We're putting this information on so you don't have to try to dig around and find it, because I know it can be a lot. So we're trying to create a central location for this information. But again, we just thank you for your time and you coming on. The big one also is don't forget Bremerton Port Orchard votes.org. Show up this week, bills that need your support. I'm going to go ahead and put that up there too. and that is also on the Conduit. Kelly, any last words before you go?
Nope. Thanks for having us.
All right. I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Please enjoy your weekend, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right. All right. So let me just go ahead and put that on the screen as I pull up Paulo here. All right. So this is local right here in Bremerton, and Port Orchard is really the kind of focal point of this group here. But these are bills that need your support. They're all listed. Like I said, we're curating this, so you don't have to go digging around for it. If you have a bill that you think is important that should be on this list, you can reach out and let us know. But yeah, we're trying to make this as easy as possible for you to provide your advocacy and support. So it's a big deal. All right. How are you doing? Thank you for coming on. Again, you're so awesome for coming on in such short notice.
Oh, I'm good. I'm new to this to Restream, so I don't know if I've got my setup for from the good mic. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no, you sound good.
All right. Yeah, this is exciting. I've never been on before, but learned a lot from that last guest, and really interested in learning more about civil survival. So what's going on?
Well, what I was hoping that you would do is, with G2, and we've joined Front and Centered, and, I was hoping that you would tell folks, who and what Front and Centered is, what kind of advocacy work that we're into, because it's we're part of
That's right.
Front and
That's
Centered, so
right.
we're super excited about that. In regards to transportation equity and transportation justice, and if you want to expand that, because Front and Center does way more than that, then that's okay too. But let's start there if that's okay.
All right. So let's see. Hopefully I can do this justice. Are you still there?
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay. I did something
I'm
wrong.
just giving you the whole screen.
Okay. All right. So transportation is one of the programs. Transportation justice is one of the programs that Front and Center does, but there's so much more. We are a statewide coalition of organizations and groups that are by, for, and led by people of color. And our main focus as a coalition is to work on climate justice. And, there's over 70 organizations that are members from all over the state. Organizations like Gather Together, Grow Together, like Kitsap Black Student Union, like Eastside Baptist Church, like Utopia, LGBTQ Pacific Islander Center in Kent, and all over the state, including Eastern Washington. And our work is focused on pollution prevention, on energy justice, and transportation justice. And I am the transportation and land use policy lead, and I help to support this amazing group of people that run our transportation justice working group. And Marwan is one of the members of that group and is doing incredible work in that space also. Marwan, you want to plug Transit Equity Day? I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this Saturday is Transit Equity Day. This will be the first year that we celebrate it. So in partnership with New Horizon Ministries and Kitsap Black Student Union, G2 and the Conduit are going to host the event. It happens to be Rosa Parks' birthday, and the Kitsap Black Student Youth are going to perform and educate us on why transportation equity is important. And there's a project that they're involved in. We actually received a grant from Front and Center, so we're super excited about that. To help us do the work. It sounds like hyperbole that the youth are our future, but that's not cap. It's true, and so we're going to empower them, and so they can advocate for themselves and their needs. Many folks here in Kitsap County are place bound. They're going to raise their kids here. They're going to live here, and they're impacted by transportation here. And if you were watching the city council meeting yesterday, you heard me testify during public comment to city council and the mayor about how transportation equity is so important and how much more critical it is post COVID when you think about folks having to work multiple jobs because housing costs are so high, food costs is so high, eggs, right? Fuel, all of these things, and wages aren't keeping up with the cost of inflation, and folks are having to work 2 and 3 and 4 jobs. Well, if there's no bus service on Saturday, if it stops working at 8:30, running at 8:30 at night, how are people supposed to get to that second and third job and make those ends meet? So they can't keep up. Then you have desperation, and some of those folks are gonna fall into the category of the last guest that we had on, and now they're just as impacted basically because they feel like they have no other choice or any other option, right? So, we can, head these things off at the past. We can reverse these injustices that exist and give people an equitable foot so that they can take care of themselves and their family. And this is really what it's all about. We don't want our children to inherit a world that's going to be harder for them to live in. And that's kind of speaking for myself on that, but I think that is kind of the voice of many that do this work. Is that a pretty good synopsis? So Saturday, the mayor, our Mayor Wheeler, is going to come out and he's going to proclaim Transportation Equity Day in the city of Bremerton. So it was short notice and he jumped right in on that. And so we're super excited. I've never done that before. So shout out to the Kids at Black Student Union and Jewel Shepherd Sampson for her work and for the youth, of course. So it's 2 to 4 at 4040 Wheaton Way, Suite 203, which is New Horizon. For folks of you that are local and listening, you know where it is because that's where we have our pancake breakfast every fourth Wednesday. It's not going to be pancakes. It's going to be spaghetti, fried chicken, salad. We're going to roll out the red carpet. We're going to have a good time. So hopefully everyone will come. We have some people coming as far as Bellevue, but it's going to be a live broadcasted. So please tune in. It's this Saturday.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing that it's coming together. The thing that I've heard people say is that Rosa Parks sparked the civil rights movement by fighting to have a seat on the bus. And today we have to struggle to make sure that there even is a bus because of all of the budget cuts, because of the impacts that that COVID has had in transit. And, I just want to sort of equate transit to some of the basic needs that we have in the society, like electricity, for example. There are places, not in America mostly, where they say there's no electricity on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
There's no electricity after 8:30 p.m. And people have real hardships because of that. And the work that we're doing at transit at front and centered is to do everything that we can to advocate for transit and safe sidewalks and safe places for people to roll their wheelchairs and bike facilities to be seen as basic human rights. That to be able to be safe and not take your life into your own hands when you go and get groceries or when you go to school or when you go to work is not a luxury. Is not something that some people should have and other people should go without because they're Black or brown or low income or because they haven't had the opportunities that other people may have. This is a basic thing that we need to provide. So, at Front and Centered, we follow this really simple recipe, right? We're saying we need to assert rights. We need to show where those rights are being violated. And then we need to demand that rights are met through advocacy, through policy, through other means. And so when it comes to transit, we started to do some research and we passed a proviso last year that asked the legislature to go out and count. Well, how many people do have access to transit that's frequent, that's reliable, that's 7 days a week, that comes every 15 minutes, that allows you to, this is crazy to think, that allows you to take the bus to work and then come home on the bus on the same day. And it turns out that the result of that is it's 7%.
Wow.
7% of the people in Washington have access to a bus that's just a basic, reliable bus route within a half mile of their house that runs every 15 minutes, that can get you to the places that you need to go. And so our next piece of work is to say, wow, that's not good. We need to do a whole lot better than that. And so we don't have a bill number yet, but we're very hopeful that we will have a bill number soon. And Jeff, if you want to go ahead and share the tiny URL link, this is a description of what the bill that we're calling Better Transit Sooner would do. Is it would establish targets for the state as a whole to get from 7% people with access to frequent transit to, in 4 years, so to in 4 years, 14% access to frequent transit, and 4 years after that, 28% access to frequent transit, and 4 years after that, 56% of the people with access to transit. I realized as I'm saying this, Marwan, that I have a typo here. I have 24, 28, 32, and it should be 26, 30, 34. So I will fix that. It would be great if we could do this in 2 years, but I think we need more time than that. And what the bill does is it sets these targets. It directs the legislature to create a fund for transit service. One of the things a lot of people don't know is that while transit agencies may have gotten quite a bit of money from the various COVID rescue packages, for most agencies, almost all of that money is capital. And you know what? A bus without a driver is not going to do anybody any good.
Mm-hmm.
You need, it's transit is almost like schools, right? It's great if we have fancy school buildings, but if there are no teachers, nobody's going to be learning. So this bill then also funds a study so that we can identify what the best solutions for rural transit are. All right. So that's what I have. I also want to show people the transit access map, which is a tool that Front and Center built late last year. And that's watransitaccessmap.org. And it lets you find out in your community how many people have access to frequent and reliable transit.
Paulo, do you have time to take us through a little exercise?
Yeah, let's do it.
I love it. Okay. So what should I type in here? Kitsap County?
Yeah, let's do Kitsap County. Let's see. Does the county come up? Oh, it does. Yeah. Jeff wants MLK way. So
oh yeah, can we drill down to zip code?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But so let's do, so Kitsap County, it came up and it shows you that you have 2 routes that run every 15 minutes. But then Marwan, click the hamburger at the top, the 3 bars. Yeah. And now click on the second one to the left, access to high frequency transit. Yeah, right there. Okay, so what that does is it shows you all the routes. And if you scroll down, you'll see that in Kitsap County, 1% of people have access to frequent transit. And keep scrolling down, then it'll show you, well, here's a breakdown by race. And
wow.
So there are many, many people that have no transit access at all. So if you look at, for example, actually Hispanic or Latino, and you hover over that, it'll show you the percentage, and hover over the black bar further to the right. Yeah, there you go. So 35% of Latinos in Kitsap County, 0 transit.
0 transit.
0 transit, no transit at all.
Wow.
And so let's go to the very top where it says compare locations. It's next to about.
All the way at the top?
Yeah. Go up. No, just
Oh, I see it. I
yeah.
see it.
Okay, and now enter King County. Let's compare.
Wow.
And yeah, it's funny that the map takes you to the center of the county, which is not. Yeah, there you go. And now scroll down, and it'll give you a side by side. So, Kitsap, we have 1% access to frequent transit, and King County, you have 35. And this is the 35 is just at rush hour, and then we have it broken down by full day, and we have it broken down by late night. Right. So
And Paulo, just to note here, where this says 0% for Kitsap County, for the last 3 weeks, I'm driving again. So I'm taking one of our clients to work. Uh, she is an I won't say elderly. She's older than I am. Has a cane, is working a graveyard shift. There's no transportation, and when she was taking a cab or an Uber, it was costing her like 3 times the amount. And she's working a service job that it doesn't exactly pay a lot. And then she just reported her rent's going up by $300. And so this is what folks are facing. And if you don't think that these things don't tie together, they do, right? We're talking about justice reform, right? Again, if I feel like I don't have a choice, then I may be forced to make some other decisions, right? We're also talking about housing and homelessness. If I can't pay my ever increasing rent and bills, then my housing becomes insecure and I can fall into homelessness, especially if I don't have friends and family that I can stay with. And even if I do, it doesn't put their lease in jeopardy because everyone could get evicted because you've got me in the house and I'm not supposed to be there, right? So these things are all connected and it's tremendously important. I just wanted to add that, Paulo.
Yeah, I really get the sense, Marwan, that you're really seeing this in the front lines, right? So here's somebody who, but for the ride that she's getting from you, is basically what we call transportation insecure. Is going to be missing a shift. Is going to be missing a important doctor's appointment. And something else that I think it's important for folks to remember, and it's easy for those of us who have this privilege, which it really is a privilege to be able to afford to have a car, to be able-bodied enough to drive a car, that there's a third of the people in Washington state who don't have that. And yet we treat this as the price of admission to be able to participate in
Oh, did you want me to keep that up? Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I was thinking, so the other thing so scroll down a little bit, or scroll up rather a little bit. I just wanted to show also, so here's you have side by side, and the red is percent with access to frequent transit. The blue is with access to less frequent transit, and the black is access to no transit, right? And you can see these are really, really stark differences, right? And yes, Kitsap is more rural, and yes, it'll always be a bit different, but there is no way that were this. I guess what I keep thinking about is if this was access to another basic service, you take your pick, electricity, water, indoor plumbing, we would not stand for these kinds of disparities, right? So the chart that you're seeing here is, well, like I just said, the red is the percentage of the population. If you scroll up down a little bit, you'll be able to see that. Oh no, the other direction. Yeah. So what you have in the left is Kitsap County, and what you have on the right is King County. And ultimately, the root of these differences, of these big disparities, is that we fund transit service locally. And so what that means is that in King County, folks have voted to tax themselves to pay for transit, and they have more means. But they also they've been able to align their politics in the way that says transit is very important. Now, if we funded schools the way we fund transit, there would be tons of places in Washington state that had no schools. Period.
Wow.
It'd be places, well, it'd be like, oh, Kitsap County, kids don't go to school over there. Right? It'd be like, oh, in Vancouver, Washington, they don't have schools. They don't do that. It's a local decision. They decided not to have schools. And it's essentially what we do with transit, right? And
well, Paulo, let me say this. Let me jump in really quick.
Yeah.
You may not know this, but our county created a community needs assessment. So Kitsap Community Resources, in conjunction with the United Way and Kitsap Public Health and others, worked on these questions and deployed it throughout the county. I think they had somewhere like 6,600 responses, and then they did focus groups after to get more into the weeds of what was important to them. And in most of the data showed that in many of the focus groups and in the data, transportation was like the second most important thing, and it was shocking to everyone. And here, this data is supporting this, and this is an outside agency, if you will, outside of Kitsap County, putting this analysis tool together. And it's like, yeah, it supports it and it aligns. So now you've got the stories from the actual residents. You've got the data to show exactly what it looks like. It's like, all right, so we've got to take care of this.
That's right. That's right. So another, so Jeff is asking, 80% of Black near high frequency rush hour traffic in Kitsap. Well, we're not talking about traffic. We're talking about bus service here. And who has access to a bus that is frequent and reliable? So no, in what we're seeing here is that very, very few people in Kitsap County can count on a reliable bus route, and that it's 78% have access to transit of some kind, but may not be very frequent, may not be reliable, in that you can get to work and come back. I want to show you something else.
Let me ask you really
Yeah.
quick, Paulo, before we move on from this. I'm not sure if you know the layout of Kitsap County, but we're on a peninsula and we're really spread out. So
Right.
Bremerton, I believe we're going to have a big pocket of Black citizens. But then we've got, Poulsbo, that's a 25-minute drive, and Bainbridge Island, which is an hour. We've got Seabeck, that's like, I don't even know where that is, 25 minutes east or west or wherever that is. We've got almost up to Gig Harbor and Deep Port Orchard, where you'll probably find more white people. And I think that's, to me, why this number would show that 46% of white people, which is almost the highest, right? I think what we have, American Indian here at 1% higher, don't have access to that transit because this county is so spread out. And so Black people tend to live in more urban areas and downtown areas, so they will have more access during that rush hour, closer to the ferry and things like that, but in Seabeck and everywhere else. So am I kind of interpreting that correctly? Because that's how I'm looking at that.
No, I think that's often the case, that where in fact, it turns out that higher income people often have less access to transit because they tend to live in the suburbs where it's very difficult to serve with transit. So if you go to view population by race, and up at the top of what we're seeing in the screen, up a little bit more, pull that down and do by income. Yeah. So what you see here, it's the folks that are making 100,000 or more have less access to transit than the folks that are making very little money. but still, this is cold comfort because almost nobody has any transit.
Right.
So this is, and if we want to go to, we can enter a location also and look at Bremerton specifically.
Yeah. How do we do that?
Go to the top, and
Hamburger?
just enter a location. Yeah, just say Bremerton. Yeah, there you go. And you can, I guess, go to compare locations and let's turn off. Oh no, keep King County, I suppose. See, so what you see here, this it's really cool where you can see the transit routes color coded by frequency. So the purple ones are your middle. I think the green ones are the ones that come, maybe once every couple of hours. And I think if you scroll down a little bit, we're missing oh yeah, the purple ones are the really infrequent ones. The red ones are the most frequent. And then underneath that, you can see the time frame and you can say, well, what does it look like all day? What does it look like late night? What does it look like in the weekends? So if you click weekends, that's going to be interesting to see when you look at what does weekend service look like full day? Yeah, there you go. So
pretty much all purple.
yeah. So it all turned purple. And what you see in the east side of Puget Sound is you continue to have a lot of service.
Yeah, you've got red here, which is most
Yeah.
frequent. You've got a lot of blue. Look at these arterials here going over to Mercer Island and to Bellevue, respectively.
Yeah.
And something that's important here, and many of us know that live here. Many of us are working low wage service jobs, right? How do you get to work on a Saturday and a Sunday? If we change this to weekdays and we go to late night,
it might, it really drops out, right?
Okay, so how do I get home from work from Applebee's?
Yeah.
Lowe's, and it closes at 9. How do I get home?
Let's see if we can close the King County one so we can drill into so go to compare locations. And I think that you can cancel, right? Yeah, or clear comparison. Yeah. So now, Marwan, if you go and you zoom in to any of these routes, you can click on the route, and you can get some information about what. Yeah, there you go. So let's click and let's see what comes up when you click on the route itself.
All right. So Jeff wanted ML King. So this is down where ML King is here. Park Avenue. I think that's about right. 6th and that's Burwell.
So what happens when you click on one of those routes, or you click on the? Oh yeah. So look at that. At rush hour during weekdays, it's more than every 2 hours. 199 minutes is more than every 3 hours. And then 700 minutes, I can't even do that math.
I'm like doing the math on that. Okay, 600 minutes is 10 hours. So we're talking about almost 12 hours there, right?
So essentially that once a night.
Wow.
So, my hope in making this tool was to be able to do exactly what we're doing, Marwan, and with Jeff's help too. It's good that he's peppering in with questions, is to be able to make it clear to folks what service do they have, so that when they go and you speak to the mayor on during Transit Equity Day and saying, great, we love this proclamation, but do you realize that we have a bus every 700 minutes during late night? How are people supposed to get home from work?
Yeah.
So, I hope that and this is the kind of thing that's a little bit invisible, right? Because it's like, well, there's a bus, I guess, it's people, here's the other thing that I think is something that I really hope that more and more people that rely on the bus because they either have a disability or because they don't drive for whatever other reason. I hope that those folks can come on shows like the Conduit, or have the opportunity to participate in discussions about transit, get roles in transit boards, get elected to office, because the honest truth is that they have a special knowledge, they have special expertise in navigating the system that is half built, that's not very well thought out, that's missing critical pieces. That, imagine folks that use a wheelchair, or that are, blind or low vision, and are navigating these streets here, oftentimes that don't have curb cuts, that don't have sidewalks, where there's a long time there. We've built roads that in the middle of cities where cars are traveling 45 miles an hour, and there's 3 lanes of traffic in each direction. So these folks that have figured out, and because of necessity, how to navigate this world that we've built, that is almost entirely geared to serve people that happen to have the privilege and the advantage of owning and being able to drive a car. These folks really understand what needs to be done, and what needs to be improved. And we need to listen to them, right? We need to really understand from them, well, where should the frequent transit go? How do bus stops need to be redesigned? How important are sidewalks really? All of these things are, to be totally honest about it, I've never had to cross the street with my eyes closed.
Mm.
Right? That is a really important piece of knowledge that somebody that's designing cities needs to have. And we're leaving all kinds of expertise, all kinds of real solutions on the table by not making those voices sort of, I'm going to drop it, front and center in our discussions, in our solutions for how to do this better.
And while you're speaking, one of the things that I don't consider, because I don't walk to get around, is just how far one light is to the next for people that do want to cross. So now they need to jaywalk to get across Warren Avenue, for those of you that are, here in Kitsap County, and what that is, right? And you could become just as impacted on that because you're jaywalking. So if they want to, jam you up, they can. But,
Exactly.
for someone who can't walk great distances, or like you said, or have some challenges that they're navigating while they're doing that's really tough to walk, a good quarter mile to cross over, just to backtrack to go to the other direction. So, just a lot of thoughts there. One of the things that I wanted to just show there, and I just wanted to put this on the screen here. Let me see if that pops up. Is, one of my quick solutions is, this is the ferry schedule for to Seattle. And as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ferry crossings that leave Seattle daily that come here to Bremerton, and 8 that go to Seattle. And at the minimum, at a start, if they just did one cycle of the bus for every route, then at least citizens can say, you know what? Yeah, it's going to take me 2 hours, but I'm going to be able to get that bus. Like, how do people get home if they're on the 1250 ferry? When we were
Right.
doing concessions for the Seahawks games, and we'd get on the ferry and come back to the other side, it's the 1250 ferry. We're getting back at 1:50 a.m. There's no bus service, so it's either a cab, or you got some transportation, or you have friends and family that can come pick you up, right? We need public transportation for that. Again, people don't just work in the county, but they're working outside of the county because they're going to get paid more, And well, everyone can't work here, right? There's not enough work here in the county that pays a livable wage or a family wage. So at the minimum, a start would be to run one full circuit of bus service every time a ferry comes in.
That's
I think
right.
that's a great start. What are your thoughts on that, Paulo?
Yeah, it's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's at a minimum, right?
Mhm.
You know? Um,
But what you have is a bridge to nowhere, right? You literally
exactly.
have
Or leaving people stranded, right? It's that same
yeah,
thing, right?
you got a
If
ferry that comes from Seattle, and it's like, "All
yeah.
right, figure it out," or wait 6 hours until the buses start running. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I heard I was at a conference and I heard a gentleman from Europe who was talking about the that he thought it was just crazy that, for Amtrak, for example, for the last, 60 years since Amtrak was created, the conversation was always on, well, Amtrak needs to pay its own way. Amtrak needs to recover all its costs, blah, blah, blah. And and in Europe, they have trains. They have lots and lots of trains. And he says, the point of good transportation is not to make money. It's because of the positive things that it creates in society. It's because of all of the things that you're talking about, Marwan, is that it allows people to go and get to a job where they earn more money, to get to school where they're going to, I don't know, learn how to be a scientist and find a cure for cancer. That's one positive outcome of a reliable transit route could be a cure to cancer, right? But we have this, and it's the same thing with roads, right? We don't say everybody who uses this road has to pay for every penny of it. We have them because they support these basic needs in society. And so I think that's what to go back to Transit Equity Day, it's so important, is that we, since the 1980s, somehow somebody, it was Reagan or somebody who was advising Reagan or something, came up with this crazy formula that says that out of every dollar of federal funding for transportation, 80% needs to go to highways and 20% for everything else.
Mhm.
And so, all right, so maybe that made sense for a short window of time where you're building out lots of highways, but we're done with that. We've built every highway we need pretty much. We need to maintain the ones that we have, but now we can see that there are tons of places where there's no transit. There's tons of places where there's just a little bit of transit, and we're leaving people stranded. And yet we're hamstrung by these crazy, outdated, sort of arbitrary rules. And you can't help but think that some of the thinking behind that has to do with who mostly depends and rides transit: people of color, lower income people, and who needs a quick ride from the suburbs to downtown. And the ferries are that as well, right?
Mhm.
So the ferries are incredibly expensive to run. Probably the most expensive public transportation, I don't know, in the world. But we do it, right? We do it because it's important for keeping the state connected together, because we have this, this really amazing geography where there's Puget Sound and the peninsula. And it's the same thing with a basic transit route. It's the same thing with light rail, with other kinds of transit. We need to build a good system because people are going to depend on it, because it's going to make a difference in people's lives in terms of their ability to just lead a full life. I mean, there's no really other way to say this. It's these researchers at University of Michigan and at another think tank that I'm not remembering right now developed a really, really interesting tool called the Transportation Security Index.
Mm.
And a lot of people might be familiar with the Food Security Index, where
Yes.
the Department of Agriculture and Department of Health at the federal level, they use this to design programs like SNAP, like food stamps and other things. And what these researchers did basically is to create something very similar to that for transportation. And they've run the survey once, and what they found is that about a quarter of the people, and it's not a surprise when you think that about a third of Washingtonians are non-drivers, but a quarter of the people in America are what we call transportation insecure. So that means that they are missing work appointments. They are not leaving the house because they don't feel safe. They are late to work. They're losing employment. They forego an opportunity. Maybe they did get into community college. Maybe they can get to their school, or they did get into the state school, or did get that job, but just can't make it because
Paulo, let me just say, that was one of the reasons why I started transportation with G2. I ran a program at Olympic College, which was called Steps to Success. And during that program, it was for non-traditional students, folks that were coming back, because they were just as impacted and coming to school, non-traditional learners, adult learners, single parents, things of that nature. And the two things that were the big barriers, well, there's three. Childcare was a huge one. Food insecurity was a big one. Folks their diet was the vending machines, which is tremendously expensive. And then transportation was the third. And so in a 10-week course or an 8-week summer course, you missing out because, your transportation isn't adequate, can't put gas in the car, right? All the different things, you're not a licensed driver. I mean, there were so many different factors that went in with that, and it was a real barrier to those folks getting their certificate or their degrees and moving on. And that is one of the great equalizers is education. And that's how I was able to change my life was education. And so, that was really the chief reason why transportation was that thing that was like, this is the void that we need to fill. No one is doing this in Kitsap County. We've got to do this first. And we also chose food, right? So those are the two things that we tackled. And the need is ever growing, right? We can't have enough vehicles and drivers, honestly.
Right. No, I mean, it would be too much to try to serve that as a nonprofit, I think, right? It's I mean, it's excellent that you can do the trips that you are making and helping the people that you are helping, but this is society needs to provide this, right? So
Well, yeah,
that's why I say, Marwan, I think that of all people, you see this most directly, that, like you're saying, that people are they're missing out on really important things in their lives, and it's costing society so much, right? Can you imagine the lost potential from all of the folks that you're talking about? What a difference it would make to have that 10-week program on your, obviously learning that content, but also being able to show an employer, I showed up every day for 10 weeks at this program, and I'm a dependable person, so here's the thing, ultimately we know how to do this. There are really good people in Kitsap Transit. There are really good people in King County Metro. There's really good people at WashDOT. It's not that hard to run a bus route, I mean, it's a great job to be a transportation planner, to be a bus driver, to be a dispatcher. We know how to do all of these things. It's just that our voices have been so easy to ignore. Because again, it goes back to the person that's riding the bus, Black, Indigenous, person of color who's working several jobs. is not the first person that elected officials have in mind when they think about, well, what are we going to do next?
Mhm.
Who do we have to, who do I have to answer to next? And so that's why, in that recipe that I said, assert rights and say, hey, this is a basic right. Number 2, show where this right is being violated. And number 3, make a lot of noise about it. And that's what we're hoping. That's why I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing and the work that the other folks in the front and center transportation justice working group are doing is, people are saying, I'm fed up with this. We need to do better. We need to do better
Absolutely.
at this, right? And hopefully, people like you will run for office, get elected, that somebody will come up and do the same thing in Kent, and really change this conversation, because there's the only thing that we don't have is the political will. There is
Mm.
plenty of money. There is plenty of knowledge here. There is plenty of experience. We just need to do it.
And Paulo, I would say is do not let people tell us that there's not enough money to tackle homelessness, food insecurity, healthcare, transportation. We're the richest country in the history of mankind. We
Right.
can do all of these things. So it's we print money. We can do what we want to do. Like you said, we just have to have the political and the social will to do what we need to do. I look at time as being the most valuable resource and not money, right? If I have time, then I can make money. But when you were talking about people making a choice and missing out on classes, okay, look, I made it to class. I'm pulling myself up on my bootstraps, right? I'm going and working that second job. I also need mental health counseling, but that's another bus ride, and something's got to give. There's just not enough hours in a day. I'm not sleeping. I still got homework to do, so those things are important. You have no idea. I mean, a good percentage of our transportation is to mental health services or
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
doctor's appointments and specialist appointments, because the need is so great, right? These aren't folks that are just wanting a ride to walk around the mall and hang out. They're taking care of life business.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, when, I do a bit of transit planning and, working right now in Albuquerque, for example, and designing a bus, helping to design a bus network for them. And one of the critical places that we need to serve always is the VA, is the unemployment office, is the Social Security office, is the mental health center. And the fact remains, though, if you can only get there once every 700 minutes, it's it's not going to do you very much good, right? And
Kind of a problem.
yeah, it's a problem. So, just to sort of wrap up, we hope to get a bill number soon.
Yeah, can you
And-
talk about the website here with the transportation justice as you're talking about the bill? Because we didn't go over this at all.
Oh yeah, right. So so this is what we call our transportation justice agenda, and it was built in collaboration with the transportation justice folks all over the state that were part of Front and Center. And it really is to reframe our attention to those needs that are going to help the most people, to reframe our attention in terms of the things that we've not built yet, the people that we left behind. So the two sort of defining challenges of our time really are climate change and equity. And it turns out that transportation has a huge impact in both of those things, right? 45% of our emissions come from the transportation sector, and 1/3, like I said before, 1/3 of the people in Washington state can't drive. And yet we don't even know where there are no sidewalks. And we already just spent the last 20 or 30 minutes talking about how little transit there is. And so it's kind of Well, it's kind of bananas that we have this clear solution for these really enormous challenges that we have with greenhouse gases, with climate change, and also with the lack of opportunity that a lot of people have because they are transportation insecure, right? The solution, it's like I said, it's not like it takes a genius, right? We need to build sidewalks and we need to have good buses. These are basic things. And so this report is sort of laying out this vision and this agenda for transportation justice, ways that we can address our climate challenge and ways that we can address our equity challenge in one fell swoop. And basically it has three ingredients here. One is let's build the transit that we need. Well, so let me start from the top here. Basically, what it says is let's stop building highways in Black and brown communities who are already all polluted and suffering from the last wave of highway building that we built starting in the 40s and 50s. So I think a lot of people listening probably know the history and have heard the term redlining. But redlining basically was when the federal government basically said, here are after the Great Depression, they said these are places where it is okay to lend money for people to buy and sell houses, and these are places where it's a risk. And guess what places were deemed to be risks, Marwan?
Would that be in the Black and brown areas?
Correct. So essentially, folks that live there couldn't borrow money to fix up their houses, so the houses went into disrepair. The folks that wanted to buy there to be in community couldn't get a loan to buy there. So then essentially you created this perfect poverty trap, right? And as a result, those places had the lowest property values. So then when maybe a well-intentioned highway designer was like, well, I need to lay down this highway and I'm going to have to purchase land, so let's do it in the most financially efficient way. Where can I buy land for the cheapest? Oh, it turns out that it's right through the Black and brown neighborhoods because they got redlined. They essentially that property got essentially made worthless or worth a lot less. So when all over the country, where you look at where the highways are, they almost invariably go through the Black and brown neighborhoods. So then many years later, 60 or 70 years later, the Washington state passes this bill called Move Ahead Washington that has, $12-13 billion to, what they call maintenance and preservation. And that sounds like, like the same thing, maintenance and preservation. But really, a lot of the maintenance and preservation just means building wider, building more highways. And what that means is putting more traffic in Black and brown neighborhoods, moving or disappropriating more homes, more businesses, more schools, and causing more environmental damage in those neighborhoods that were harmed to begin with. So the first step in the transportation justice agenda is stop the harm, right? Stop. So we have this very, very powerful tool in Washington state called the Environmental Health Disparities Map. And it shows, through a variety of mixes, a variety of indicators to show you, hey, this is where people are most exposed to diesel particulates, and they have the highest rate of cardiovascular disease, and there is the highest poverty and the highest rates of Black and brown population. And all of these things combined show you, this is where people are exposed to a lot of pollution and have the highest vulnerabilities. out of the 12 highway projects that the Move Ahead Washington bill passed, 7 of them are in the communities that have the highest environmental health disparities in the state today.
Wow.
So, yeah, exactly. And so what we're advocating for here in the first thing in the transportation justice agenda is just don't do that. Stop kicking people that have already borne the biggest cost for the way that we do transportation today, right?
When you say it, it sounds so simple. It's like, just stop doing it.
Yeah.
Number
right?
one.
I mean, that's rule number 1, right? Stop digging the hole. Stop causing all this harm. There's all of this research that shows that Black and Hispanic people breathe in 50 to 60% more pollution than we create. Right? So which again should be really intuitive, right? Because where do they put the highways? Right? So
Right.
that essentially the role of highways in our society has been up until now to take wealthier, whiter people from the suburbs to the high-paying jobs in the center cities. And they do that by going through the Black and brown communities that were the originally red line ones. So that's the first step. The second step is to do the stuff that we're talking about in our bill that we're calling, and that name will hopefully stick, is Better Transit Sooner, which is let's just make it a priority and focus our attention and focus our creativity and our efforts to expand the reach of frequent and reliable transit so that it can do all of the things that we just got done talking about: get people to work, get people to school, get people to their mental health, and then finally to build sidewalks and to create those investments to close those gaps that are missing, right? One of the other bills that we hope to be running in this session is one that says to the state, "Hey, state, you need to come up with a data inventory of where the sidewalks and the curb cuts are, because guess what? Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has any idea. If you pick any road randomly in the state and said, can I use my wheelchair here? There is no data that will tell you that.
Mm.
And so what we're asking for is that the state take an inventory and create the data for somebody to be able to say, I'm going to go from point A to point B in an accessible way. Is it possible? And even further, to be able to say, what's the route that would take me from point A to point B if I'm using a manual wheelchair? What if I'm using a powered wheelchair? What if I'm blind? Right? These are, again, it's pretty advanced science, computer science. Actually, it's these amazing researchers at the University of Washington have come up with these ways to create shareable and interoperable and routable data about these things. But we can do it. We know how to do it. We just need to go and do it. So we're asking for, it sounds like a lot of money, $10 million to inventory every single road in the state. But you know what also costs $10 million, Marwan? 3 miles of rural highway with 1 lane in each direction and no shoulder.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
That's it. So, this is all about exactly like you said, don't let anybody tell you that there isn't money. We're just spending it in the wrong ways. We're repeating these mistakes of the past. We're not listening to the people that I mean, we're so good at amplifying the needs of people that have a lot to begin with, and so good at ignoring the needs of people that have a little.
Paulo, what I see is the failure, I think, from politicians and other folks to see the correlation and the causation of not doing these things, right? They talked about how racism impacted revenue and profits, right? Like,
Yeah.
companies were leaving off trillions of dollars because they weren't, investing in black labor and businesses and things of that nature. And it's like, okay, so if black and brown people are experiencing these carcinogens and pollutions and toxins, right? Well, that's more of us that need, healthcare, right? Because we're experiencing all these things. Well, then you're looking at why healthcare it costs so much, why folks can get to work, why poverty levels so high, why crime ends up increasing because of access issues, the homelessness issue that is exploding nationwide, and how that plagues especially the black community and men in particular. There's a lot of focus on women and families and kids because that pulls at our heartstrings. But if you look at the numbers, there's a lot of single men out there that are homeless and don't have an opportunity or an option because there are no social programs for that demographic, right? So it was like, if we did these things, we'd actually probably save money on the other end, and quite a bit of it, right? I mean,
right.
the cost that it costs to imprison someone versus give them skills and education and resources, it's just so skewed. But in our minds, it's like, well, no, because I made all the right choices. I pulled myself up from the bootstraps. I didn't have anything. My family did this. And it's like you're missing the whole point, and you're spending so much more than you have to do. If you just did the human thing, there'd be a lot more for everyone. And I just don't see how people miss it.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And cities, like there's obviously cities live and die by the property taxes they collect, right? And also by the share of sales tax that they collect. And yet a lot of cities are just ruled by their traffic engineers who only care about getting cars through their city as fast as possible, and thereby create environments where people don't want to spend a lot of time. They don't want to spend a lot of money. It's dangerous to be there. Developers don't want to build things there. And so, we have in this sort of entirely backwards sort of value system have valued people's time behind the wheels so much that we're like burning money out in the backyard when it comes to a city's whole budget, right? When you think, this is, there's well, I don't know if you remember the gentleman, Reverend Larry from Eastside Baptist, who's a member of the Transportation Justice Working Group at Front and Center that we meet with once a month. The Pastor Willoughby from that church, he gets it. He looks at the road in front of the church. It's Portland Avenue in Tacoma. It's basically a freeway on the surface, right? It's 3 lanes of traffic with a turn lane in the middle. It's like you were saying earlier, it's a mile or a half a mile between safe crossings. It's basically, for all intents and purposes, traffic's going 50, 60 miles an hour. And there's a tiny little, sidewalk. And guess what? The property values there are really low. And nobody wants to start a business there, and it's really dangerous for people to in the community to get to their church. And the pastor is like, I want this to be a community that people move into and stay their whole lives, because they can raise kids there, because they hopefully they can find a place that's affordable, and when they want to move up, they don't have to move out. They can just move to across the street, move down the street, right? But what happens is that people live there and then they move out as soon as they get together a little bit of money. And a lot of that is driven by the fact that the main artery through that neighborhood, what some people call a strode. It's a street and a road mushed together, and it's like this, this sort of Frankenstein thing that does none of those two things very well. It's a terrible place for you to be outside of your car, and it's a really dangerous place to drive because it's designed like a freeway, but it has all of these distractions, right? It has intersections, it has bus stops that pull up. Seriously, I kid you not, this happens all the time. The bus stop pulls and drops, a dozen kids on one side of the street, and then what do the kids do? They all dash as fast as possible across the street to try to
Yep.
get to the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that do? It's ultimately an economic sinkhole. Like because we think it's so important for the person that's behind their car to travel across this area unimpeded at 55 miles an hour, the city is losing all of this potential. That could be a place where there could be affordable housing. It could be a place where there's a coffee shop. It could be a place where there are all kinds of things that could, and ideally there's a way to, there's a smart way to say, and we're generating a tax base from here that gets reinvested in the community, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously. But we don't do that. We go and it's somebody was telling me when I was talking about Strodes. Yeah, it was Naire from the Urban League. Have you ever met Naire?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. No, she's terrific. So I was doing this little presentation about Strodes, and she's like, and if you think about it, every single MLK Boulevard in America is a horrible street like that.
Well, not a lie. Not a lie.
Right. So you all were, I think Jeff was saying MLK. I would love to see what MLK in Bremerton looks like. What does it look like?
It's about 2 blocks, and it's basically a homeless encampment.
Oh, all right.
On one side, it's on the back of the Salvation Army, and then on the other side is the Marvin Williams Community Center. And yeah, we've got and many cities have this issue, but we have a real issue here. And again, it's what you were saying before, right? We're just not prioritizing our money in the way that we should, which I honestly believe we could snap our fingers and resolve some of these things almost literally undernight, right? Overnight. If we were to, say, it always baffles me for folks that look at American exceptionalism and it's like, built in the USA. So it's like, all right, so let's not outsource. Let's build it here. Let's build homes, right? Let's teach, skills. And now you've got the home builders that are building their own homes. They can be employed to build other homes, right? And let's just invest that way instead of outsourcing all of this, all of these resources, and really kind of build and feed our own ecosystem. And we really could resolve many of these issues.
Yeah.
The solutions are there. We just have to want to do it.
Exactly. And just to sort of put a bow on this whole transportation thing, transit is in crisis all over the country because they can't get enough drivers. So, I don't know why this was a surprise to anybody, but a lot of baby boomers are retiring because they're old, and because they deserve it. They're done with that. And then, a lot more are choosing to retire because of COVID. But transit agencies have not been able to recruit. And that's, there are people that are cutting service. There's many places that they every other bus is missed because they can't get a driver.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't pay well, right? And then here in Kitsap, I mean, you can see how infrequent the bus runs. So, that's a big loss of jobs there.
Right. So
yeah, absolutely.
So, I think we fully recognize that if we're going to meet these goals that we're advocating for here, this means a lot of jobs for a lot of people, and it's got to be a lot of jobs for young people because it's their time, right?
Hmm.
And these are good jobs. The pay is pretty good. Can always be better, but the pay is, and the benefits tend to be really, really good. And so, just like anything, I think it's really important for the transit agencies, for the unions to go out and to say, hey, being a bus operator, it's a good job. That's a career. Um, and pays, I don't know, $20 to $25 an hour to start. And it's, the transit agencies need to get better at making the training easier to get through. I've heard of like really interesting efforts that some agencies are doing, and I can't remember where exactly, but where they're doing the commercial driver's license training, which takes a long time, right? It takes weeks and weeks and weeks. So they're doing that in prison, so that
Really?
yeah, I need to, and I'll look up where that is, and then I'll send it to you. But so they're doing that training, and when people get out, day one, they have a job that pays well. Day one, they can start contributing to society, right? And then there's making sure that we're doing that training at community colleges, making sure that we're going to schools and saying, hey, this is a good career. But also thinking about, like, young people really value flexibility. Oh, here's an interesting thing, right? Is that that sort of a generational divide, is that a lot of young people, the anecdote is, don't want to go and be a bus driver because even if you smoke weed and then 3 days later you have a shift, you're obviously not high anymore. Any one of us
Mhm.
who's ever smoked a joint in our lives know that you're not high 3 days later, but your urine test will show up for a month, and then you lose your opportunity to drive. And so there is a new test out that is approved by the Federal Transit Administration, as far as I understand. That's a saliva test that only catches the last 24, 48 hours. But
Really?
that's right. And
Wow.
it does its purpose, right? You don't want somebody
Mhm.
who's drunk driving your bus. You don't
Right.
want somebody who's stoned driving your bus, but you don't want to have to say to somebody, you can never drive a bus because you had a beer when you were watching the game last weekend. Right? I mean, it's like, so it's these things of like, oh, well, we have problems to solve, let's go solve them. Somebody figured out a way to do this test, somebody figured out how to do the administration, so that blah blah blah, all these things, and now let's go hire those drivers, right?
Oh,
And
man, that would be when you find that out, Paulo, please share that. That would
yeah,
be awesome.
yeah.
Really.
And so, I just, it's a and Rebecca from Front and Center, right? Her whole
Mhm.
family, they're all bus drivers. She's got bus drivers in every agency in the state, basically. And it's a great career. It's really good work. um we need to do a better job of adapting that work for the workforce that's here today, but also changing these rules so that people can take advantage of these opportunities, right?
Mhm. And it sounds fun to me. I mean, I drive, so,
That's right.
I
That's
don't do
right.
it all the time,
You,
but it's fun. It's relaxing, and you feel like you're making an immediate impact in someone's life. That's one of the reasons that I love what we do in regards to case management and food and transportation. It's like it's immediate, it's now, it's tangible, even with the Conduit, right? They're getting information right now that they can use and apply to their lives. So, yeah, I'll go live after I drop my person off, and it's just like, oh, it's great. It's the middle of the night. There's really no one out here. It's just, just fills you up, and it's like I'm ready for the next day.
that's right. That's
Next day's
right.
Christmas. Let me get to bed so I can wake up tomorrow and do it all again. I'm excited.
I'll never forget. I was in this this little town in the Bay Area. I forget what the town was called. I was there for a project, and it was a long time ago. It was like 10 years ago. And I took the bus to the because I was doing a project at a hospital, and I took the bus, and it was sort of the middle of the day, after the school had ended, and the bus driver was a really grumpy guy, right? He was a grumpy guy. You could tell he was a grumpy guy. But then this girl got on, and something was up with her, and he like stopped the bus, and he's like, "You all right? You're good? What's going on?" And I could tell that, she got on the bus every day with him, and he seemed grumpy to me, but he was checking up on her, right?
Yeah.
And and it's one of those things of like, these are the kind of ties that make up a community, right?
And there used to be so many more stories of that in the
Yeah.
past. We have them because we're doing transportation, but,
Yeah.
people love their bus drivers. I think that's our one regret this year for Transportation Equity Day, is that we didn't get a chance to reach out to Kitsap Transit and get a list of bus drivers that we could give awards to, because of the impacts, on the lives of those that that ride their routes.
Yeah.
So we missed
Yeah.
that opportunity. But I wanna wrap up. We've been going, for quite a while. I appreciate you coming on. Last minute, you are awesome, Paulo. Let me go ahead and give you
Thank you.
a super horn for that. Thank you for the
I'm so
education.
glad that our paths crossed, Marwan. This is really it's a real pleasure for me, and I really admire the work that you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, back at you, I said I learn, this is not we've been so focused with our head down on doing the work and serving people individually. We never thought of branching out and talking to city council or to the mayor or to Congress, we just or to the legislature. We just never thought about that. And it's so important. And it was something that we needed to put into our toolbox and gather other like-minded people together and say, okay, so how can we do this better and advocate? I spoke at city council a few weeks ago, and it was like, the ultimate goal is, G2 transportation doesn't exist because there's an adequate enough public transportation that we're not needed. But right now we are needed, and we're not being used to our potential. And we're a necessity right now. We're filling a really important void. But, in 15, 20 years, it'd be great if, G2, there's a van in a museum somewhere. And it's like, remember
That's
back
right.
when G2
That's
used to
right.
do this? And we
That's
can get there. And so
Yeah.
it's just adding on to what it is we already do to try to move to that end goal ultimately. And it's equity through transportation for all, amongst all the other things that we do. Any final things that you want to shout out?
Well, no. So I know that Jeff wants to cover one more thing. I'm going to say goodbye. I guess the last thing I want to say is, when we do this again, let's do one on electrification, because I'm working on the Washington State Transportation Electrification Strategy, and it really intersects with all of these issues, and it has the potential to it has the potential to make things a lot worse, and it has the potential to make things a lot better. And we need to choose which path we go down. So I'm going to sign off. This is a real pleasure.
Thank you, Paulo. And I got a lot of questions about electrification. So, because I'm like this on there, I'm getting information from both sides, and I don't have any way to sift through and find out what's true and what's accurate and how much it is, because mainstream media is so polarizing, right? They're either all the way for it or they're all the way against it, and it's just talking points, and there's no through line to or nuance in the discussion. So I'm looking forward to that.
No, I think it's a really interesting discussion, and it's got it's actually not at all separate from this idea of transportation justice, and it could it's again, we're shaping, like, where we are. We're like at the beginning of, in the 30s when they were planning the interstate highway system, right? The massive investment of public dollars that shaped people's lives for years to come, for good and for ill. A lot of times for bad, right? Look at the climate change is one clear outcome of that, right? And we're in that moment again. And I know that you guys have been going for 4 hours now, so I'm going to shut up. But this was a real pleasure, and I mean, Marwan, anytime. I'm happy to, shoot the breeze here with you.
Oh,
Anytime.
well, I appreciate it. Well, maybe we'll have to do a fun show where we just talk about interest and things of that nature.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you.
Be
Thank you,
well.
Paulo.
How do I hang up? You'll hang up for me, right?
Well, there's if you just want to close the tab, you can.
Oh, all
You
right.
see it up there?
I'm yep, got it.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Man, we have had a full show. This has just been fantastic. I believe I've got one more thing to share with you. Go to the bottom when I get there. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and pull that up. Man, there's been so much. I want to recap it, but it might take me 30 minutes to recap all the stuff. Just know the stuff that's going on in Tacoma is so important. If you have time to get out there and advocate, hold the sign, stand in solidarity, that would be huge to do that. Let's see. Is it this right here? Is this what you wanted me to show? Aha, good. I got it. All right. So this is, again, super important. I want you to please do me a favor. First favor is subscribe to the Conduit and hit the notification bell so you never miss when we go live, right? This was literally, and I got to give Jeff a round of applause because he put this together behind the scenes, and he's not even in this state. So he gets 2 of these. Again, there is enough work for everyone to do, and it's going to take all of us doing the work to make the change. So the first thing, subscribe to the Conduit. If you'd like to donate to the Conduit, we could do a lot more, but that's the very first thing. The second thing that I want you to do is to go ahead and bookmark this link, which will bring you here, and this is in the description. And why this is so important, is, again, this has been curated for you to make it a little bit easier. And this pulls together bills that need your support, right? So bills in the Washington State House of Representatives. And we talked about many of these bills here. They already have the links that are pulled up. Let me go ahead and click on one just to show you. These are things that we went over, right? So it's going to take you right there. You want to comment on the bill. You saw me how I was doing the autofill, right? It's that fast. I mean, literally in seconds. I'm doing it as I'm talking, right? It's all here. Concerning labor and income and incarcerated persons, guaranteed basic income, protecting tenants from excessive rent, concerning solitary confinement, unemployment program for undocumented workers, protecting tenants from excessive rent, protecting manufactured home communities, concerning legal financial obligations, improving access and removing barriers to jail-based voting, to stop making disabled people pay back benefits. Good Lord. Concerning foreclosure, protect it just on and on and on. And they may not all resonate with you, but for the ones that do, please go in, click on. If you can't do a public testimony, if that seems too scary, you can write in your comments what you would say, right? And please follow along with that. These are the bills that are in the Washington State Senate, right? So you got your HBs, your House bills, and you have your Senate bills. Again, unemployment for undocumented workers, protection for mobile home communities, right? So you want to do both. Make sure that you get both of them there. A sample is there for you, but I just went through it. You hit send, and that's it. That's it. Super easy to do. So please bookmark this. Bremerton, Port Orchard votes. The Washington legislature is now in session. This is the time. Again, Black Student Union, G2, the Conduit, God's Broken Home University, we're going to be transporting a bunch of our youth out to the Capitol building on February 20th. Now, Civil Survival is going to be there. We're going to document it. We'll be going live during that event. So do tune in for that. But we're doing something different. Our birthday, G2 turns 5 years old in 6 days on February 8th. And when I started this organization, this wasn't even anywhere near. This wasn't even on the map of what G2 would be doing. But now we're doing this, and it's important work. And that is what growth is, right? You start off, you have a plan, and you go about doing the work. And as you do the work, you find out that there's more need. You can do this. You can't do this. You should do this. We want to grow to be able to do this. And now we find ourselves here. It is very empowering to be a part of this movement in whatever capacity that we can do. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And so if we're all together having our one bite at a time, that elephant doesn't stand a chance. So help me eat that elephant, y'all. Little barbecue sauce, just be delicious. There's other videos here that are important here. I can see links from the Conduit, which is great. And just things that are really important, okay? And again, it doesn't matter if you're already for it. Oh, you can even register to vote here, right? Like literally making it just nice and easy for you. So share this out, staying informed, news, who represents you, who are your representatives, local groups and resources and educational links, all of these things, right? City council, county commissioners, Kitsap Transit, state legislature, the shipyard was on there. Again, kudos to Jeff for putting this all together. This is the brainchild of one person and the support of a few others to make this happen. I mean, think of how impactful and powerful that we are as individuals and how much more we can be if we join together in solidarity and take the walk together, right? It's not lonely, and together we'll make it. And if we fall short, we've made it a little bit farther for the next generation, for our children and our children's children. So that is my soapbox. This was the Conduit Legislative Roundup. This was a lot of fun, super informative. I've learned a tremendous amount of information over the last 3 hours. So just really important. You have everyone's information. I'm assuming that when excuse me, Jeff gets the chance, he will be editing these videos down so they're in smaller clips. And what's great is for those that maybe don't find out about this for a couple of weeks and they've missed this legislative session, it gets you into a good position for next year for advocacy, right? It's like you may be watching this for the first time and it's like, oh man, this is really hitting my heart. I want to do something about this, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. There's only 2 days left. Don't fret, right? Go ahead and educate yourself now. Get connected with organizations, get connected with great individuals, and be ready for the next year, right? The fight is not going to stop, in April, right? It's going to continue on and continue on and continue on. But the people that we voted for that are in the House and Senate need our continued support in order to bring the change and then also sustain that change and not have that change expire, right? Or become antiquated where it's not doing enough or what it used to, how it was intended, right? And it needs to be changed and tweaked. So we have to continue to support our politicians that we do elect. We do have to continue to support those House bills and Senate bills that we do push forward and we do speak out about, right? And those that we're against, right? For or against. For me, it's just important that you are active politically. It doesn't matter on what side that you come down on. For me, that's not important. Just your activation and your participation is what's important to me. But again, I thank you all. Thank you for staying with me for this time. I appreciate you tuning into the Conduit. Again, please subscribe. Get this out to your organizations. One of the things that we see that happens is folks that we're connected to, right? Let's say Rob at G2, he subscribes to the Conduit, but he doesn't encourage the rest of his staff to subscribe. So only he subscribes. So tell your office to please subscribe to the Conduit, right? It's free, doesn't cost anything to hit that subscribe button. But I am Marwan Cameron. This is the Conduit. We'll see you in Olympia.